Tonight, a love story that turns into a lost story. A lost mom of two young boys, that is.
Plus a key witness, Deborah, who asks the police to pray with her before she tells them what she knows. And All New 2020 starts right now.
She was a wonderful mother. She loved her boys more than anything, more than her own life.
A young woman who's a parent, suddenly it disappeared.
Was there anything suspicious in the car?
We saw in the back seat were car seats, for the two boys.
But to disappear without them? That was impossible. That was not Laura.
She drops off the map. This wasn't going to be just a normal missing person.
Oh, baby, don't go. Oh, baby, don't leave me.
He knew how to charm a lady and charm the crowd alike.
And then it wasn't too much longer later that Amanda came into the picture.
Did Grant tell your mom about Laura?
That she was crazy, she was mentally unstable.
He lied.
And here was a document that said she sold her kids for $25,000.
And they were like, well, Laura's missing. And I was like, wait a freaking second. Are you sure?
What are you thinking at this point?
Something is really wrong.
You've got to be sick and deranged.
What would drive anybody to commit such a crime?
Wherever she is, her heart is breaking.
The search continues.
There's been cases I investigate I don't even remember. But then there's some that while you're in the midst of it, this one was just different.
Oyster Creek is notorious for alligators.
It's just a long, meandering creek.
It's a small creek, slow moving in that area.
Very dark, murky, muddy water.
Has no visibility. It's heavily wooded. There's a lot of lily pads.
All the lily pads literally took off the creek.
It was the perfect place to get rid of what they wanted to get rid of.
This is Oyster Creek, a quiet spot about 30 miles outside Houston, Texas. On a hot, steamy July day, just like this one, back in 2011, police divers were scouring these murky waters, searching for clues in the disappearance of a young mom. Laura Ackerson was last heard from 1,200 miles away from here, in North Carolina.
Wednesday, July 13th at 4:19 p.m. Hey ladies, Laura. I'll be here in about an hour, but I'm going to go visit with my boys. Don't know what's going to happen as far as that's concerned.
Laura left that voicemail for a friend she promised to visit later that night. Meanwhile, another friend and business partner, Siobhan Mathis, was also waiting to hear from her.
It was just very odd that it was going straight to her voicemail because she always had that phone on. I walked to her house, but it's gated and locked and you can't get in, but I can see into the garage and her car wasn't there.
Then she sends her an email. I'm really worried. If you don't get up with me, I'm going to call the police.
Siobhan was getting more and more worried with every passing second, and she decided to report Laura missing.
I don't want to think the worst, but it's almost like what else is there to think?
Police in Raleigh, North Carolina start looking into Laura Ackerson's background. They find out she's a small-town girl from Michigan. Roger Ackerson was her dad.
She's curious. She wanted to learn things. She'd crawl up in my lap with a book, want me to read to her.
Laura's parents divorced when she was just a toddler. As she grew older, it was clear she had a bright spark.
Full of dreams. She could see beyond the end of her nose, where a lot of people can't.
Everybody she met, she would always see the good in everyone.
She didn't become the valedictorian of her high school class because she didn't want to do all the work. But a couple of years down the road, she said, "Boy, I wish I had."
After high school, she moved to North Carolina and landed a waitressing job. That's where she met Heidi Schumacher.
We were working at Applebee's together. Her first day, I was training her. I was a little snippety at her, and she said, "You're not going to talk to me like that." Nobody had ever stood up to me before, and I said, "Oh, you know what?" I smiled at her, and I said, "Well, let's go out tonight. We're going to be great friends."
And then, when Laura turned 23, she had an announcement to make.
And she was like, "Oh my gosh, I have a surprise for you." And I said, "Okay, well, happy birthday," because it was on her birthday. And I was like, "Okay, what is the surprise?" She's like, "Okay, it's a guy." And I said, "Oh, all right, surprise, it's a guy."
So dripping tired, shoes on the floor, food and
was a aspiring musical artist.
Show me one man, I'll show you a man.
He was known to Raleigh area.
Talk to her sweetly, tell her no lie.
Raleigh is a place we call the New South. It's a great mix of people coming from all over the country, raising their families. It's big enough that you have a city atmosphere, but it also has some small-town values.
Downtown Raleigh is kind of burgeoning, and so there are all these, new bars and restaurants, and he was a musical act who would play at a lot of these places.
Are you still with me when I'm gone? Are you still with me when I don't come?
People liked his music. People liked his vibe.
Grant Hayes, we love you.
And she said, we share a birthday. We're so connected. She thought it was some sort of cosmic intervention that they were supposed to meet and they were supposed to be together.
We were always together, right? And the nighttime go outside.
And she was smitten. She was. And he was, he's a nice looking guy. He's charismatic. And so seeing that, I think maybe a little bit of starstruck.
I grew up in the pew, little Grant III, watching my father preach, and my mother would sing. And they've always been a huge inspiration.
Grant was known by his last name, Hayes. He thought he could get some more buzz by changing H-A-Y-E-S to H-A-Z-E, Hayes.
She was kind of in awe of what he did. See, he would go to bars and he'd take his guitar and he'd sing songs.
I'm working with some iconic figures in history, music history. Little Richard, godfather of rock and roll.
Laura and Grant fell in love very quickly.
She goes, my surprise is that I just got married. And I said, oh my gosh, awesome. She just was a spur of the moment kind of person, so it didn't really surprise me, I guess, that she would just meet somebody and get married to them. And she was like ecstatic at that moment.
Laura got pregnant very early on, and she had a little boy named Grant, the fourth. Always referred to as Little Grant.
What she told me after she delivered the baby was that she was very happy because when Grant walked in and saw him, he fell in love with the baby.
Oh, baby, don't go. Baby, don't leave me.
Heidi was not a fan of Grant Hayes, and she was very clear about that.
We've had hateful tension between us since the moment we met. And she said, why can't you just be happy for me? I said, I know, but I just got this really bad feeling from him. And, and she would say that I was just trying to protect her and I was just being an overprotective friend and, all that. And so I backed off.
Soon, an opportunity in the Caribbean takes Laura and Grant's lives in very different directions.
Party, stay out late, stay up all night. They were kind of living two separate lives.
There was something simmering underneath that in the relationship. There may have been trouble there in paradise.
St. John is a really quaint, quiet island. It's about 4,000 people.
It's a magical place. It's a fantastic place. It's got an affluent clientele that goes there because 80% of the island's national park can't even be developed.
Yeah, there is no airports. The only way to this island is by boat. You're going to take your flight to St. Thomas. You're going to have to take a passenger ferry.
St. John's attracts musicians from all over. Kenny Chesney owns a home here, and a local island hangout helped inspire his song, When I See This Bar.
Yeah, that's what I see when I see this bar.
Grant had an audience. People liked his music here in Raleigh, but he thought he could take the next step in his career with music by going to the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Jose, who asked us only to use his first name, booked musicians into the bars and nightclubs on the island.
My phone rang, and it was Grant. He explained that he was looking to make sure that he could get enough gigs to support his basic costs of living. I promised him that I could get him 5 shows a week.
So he packed up and went down there.
He did speak of his son and Laura and that she was going to eventually come down here once he got settled.
The Caribbean can be very seductive with the night air, the breezes, the music, the sand. When the sun goes down is when it really comes alive.
He knew how to work his crowd and play the right music for the people in the audience.
And I was listening to him play, and I really liked his sound. You know the artist Sade? He was like a male version of her. It just kind of a groovy, smooth vibe.
Show me one man, I'll show you a man.
He definitely had some similarities to someone like Darius Rucker.
I owned a bar on the island of St. John. How I first encountered Grant Hayes, he was playing, I believe it was at the Parrot Club. He was taking a break. He said, man, I really dig your sound. I'll bring some people from my bar down. And he says, really? From your bar? Yeah. You know, but they won't be spending money with you if they're not at your bar. I don't care. We'll have a good time. He was just waiting for that one guy to come in that's on vacation that might be with a record company. To actually identify and recognize that this guy has talent. Let's make him an offer.
But for now, he had to make do with paychecks of $150 to $200 per gig.
It looked from the outside looking in that Laura and Grant had a great relationship. No one really knew the trouble brewing.
He was very possessive. It was like he owned her.
Grant didn't want her to have a relationship with her brother. He did not want any close relationships except for the one with him.
Well, she had pretty effectively been isolated from everyone else in her life. I mean, he would take her self-esteem and just crush it into the ground. I, got to the door and she answered and she had a bloody nose and a, almost black eye already. I tried to get her to go to the hospital or file a police report or anything. And no, we won't do it again. It's okay. It's gonna be okay. I'm not gonna press charges. It's fine.
She's an optimist. She thought, well, he may change eventually. Always looking for the better side of him.
Grant denied ever hitting Laura. Now she's planning to join him on St. John. But then she says she receives a stark warning from family and friends.
I told her, don't go back. You don't need to go back to that.
She really realized, man, I have to leave him. And I said, okay. And then we had a plan for her to leave, and she had gotten sick 3 or 4 mornings in a row. And she was pregnant. I said, you can still leave. You can still go. And she said, no, I have to tell him it's the right thing to do.
It would have been easy. Just stay here. But instead she went back.
She was going to do whatever it took to make that family work. She went down to St. John to start over, and she had told me that he said, oh, when you come down here, it's going to be great.
Now reunited on the island of St. John, Laura gives birth to their second son in August of 2009. They name him Gentle.
And then you have Gentle because now in my maturity, I'm understanding what real masculinity is, and it's gentle.
She was a wonderful mother. She loved her boys more than anything, more than her own life.
She was a good mother, and she laid low and was a housewife. She wasn't into the party. They were kind of living 2 separate lives, and that's one of the reasons why he would hang out at my house, just so that he could do what he wanted and be himself, because he couldn't do that at home. Party, stay out late, stay up all night.
I never saw him walk over and kiss her on the cheek or any of that. There wasn't that kind of in-person tenderness between them that I ever saw.
The little baby, Gentle, needed some medical attention and thought that here in North Carolina would be a better place to get him the medical care he needed.
So she made plans to move back to take care of her boy.
Laura had left the island and he was kind of on his own. That wasn't really good for him because then he could just really do whatever he wanted. He knew how to charm a lady and charm the crowd alike. So it wasn't hard for him to have a group of ladies to chat with after he stopped playing, and he had no problem getting them to blush and getting a phone number.
And sure enough, another woman soon makes waves in Grant's island life.
Amanda, to me, was a striking woman.
And Laura became concerned and suspicious and had a huge surprise coming her way. It appeared that things were going well in St. John. Grant was trying to get his music career going there. Laura, she's living here in North Carolina with the two little boys, trying to get their youngest son needed medical treatment.
And then it wasn't too much longer later that Amanda came into the picture. Amanda, to me, was a striking woman.
Amanda's daughter, Shay, shared a lot of details with us, but she asked that we not use her last name. And what was your relationship like growing up?
My mom was my best friend. My mom was my hero. Like, what do you want to be whenever you grow up? I want to be like my mom.
Amanda had been married 3 times previously, and the most recent husband before Grant was a wealthy businessman in Texas. And he actually died in an accident. After his death, there's a lot of money that Amanda inherits.
Her big claim to fame was in acting. She was in the actual Stepford Wives, the remake that was done with Nicole Kidman, and she had a very small part.
So how did she end up in St. John?
She went down there on vacation. She was supposed to be gone for 2 weeks.
She loved it so much. She moved down to the Virgin Islands. That was where she wanted to live.
You lived there with her?
I did.
How old were you at that point?
I was 20.
And so how did she meet Grant Hayes?
He was playing music.
So it brought some people down there to listen to Grant play. And Amanda come in. She was looking at him like she hadn't eaten in a while, and he was a steak.
Who pursued whom?
The tango is two-sided.
And did you see their infatuation romance unfold?
It wasn't instant. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, fireworks, oh.
I definitely started seeing him hanging with Amanda, and it was obvious that they were a couple.
I called him out for it. I said, man, you can't be doing this with her up in the States, Lori up in the States. He goes, oh, no, we're getting divorced, and it's over. She's staying up there. She's never coming back to the island.
What was Grant's relationship like with Amanda?
Yeah, I think with Amanda, because she was a little bit older, more mature, I don't think that she was sort of pushed around and controlled.
Got very territorial. Let's say there's a group of females in there, and one was, Grant and her were having too much eye contact and smiles, whatever. Then Amanda being over here would have the server bring her a drink, so that's from Grant's girlfriend. It kind of set her territory.
And Laura, from a distance here in North Carolina, became concerned and suspicious there was something else happening there. Eventually, this relationship between Amanda and Grant takes the next step. It develops into something more. And they make the move from the Virgin Islands to New York.
She convinced him that she can introduce him to the people that can make his career take off.
Was he successful?
I mean, he got repeat bookings at some of the different places. He played the Grant Hayes variety show.
Let me get a warm welcome for Mr. Grant Hayes!
I don't know. I ain't trying to.
And then Grant says, to Laura, I would really like little Grant, their oldest son, to come visit me in New York.
Grant is shorter. This is just for 10 days. 10 days came and went, and he hasn't brought Grant back. And Laura was asking why. You said you would.
And Laura had to file for custody to even see her son again. She didn't have a choice.
Fighting to get her oldest boy back, in April of 2010, Laura hears surprising news.
Grant calls her and says, Amanda and I just went to Vegas and we got married. It's a bombshell. It's a shock to Laura.
It was a little surprising that they were getting married. They were definitely moving very fast.
I married my soulmate, my best friend, and she is something that I wanted my whole life.
Friends and family had been given the impression that Laura and Grant were married, but apparently they never were.
Then Grant took a very aggressive move and went to court without her.
He made these allegations about she's mentally unstable, she doesn't have a stable home, she's working as an escort.
They had alleged that Laura was a danger to the children. He lied. He said several things in the ex parte custody order that just plain weren't true. And based on those allegations, Mr. Hayes got Judge Turner to sign an emergency custody order.
He granted a temporary custody to Grant. Not just little Grant, but also Gentle. And little Gentle was carted off from there and given over to his father.
The worst time in her life was when she did not get to see her kids. She was devastated.
He went to work to do whatever it would take to get the two boys back.
As for Grant and Amanda, they moved down to Raleigh as the custody battle heats up.
We had the court appoint Dr. Ginger Calloway
Where do you practice?
In Raleigh.
to evaluate both parties.
To be able to give the court an opinion over whose home may be the best home for these children to be in.
During that evaluation, Laura went on the record to say that Grant had isolated and controlled her, while Grant charged that she was the one manipulating him.
When the psychologist's report came in, the parts about Mr. Hayes referred to him having some, what the psychologist called, illogical and disturbed thinking.
He rages angrily about Laura in front of the children. It is obvious they do not want Laura included in the children's lives. This is very concerning because, in essence, they want to obliterate her.
And she came basically to the conclusion that, Laura had work to do.
She is less mature than other adults and is easily overwhelmed.
The psychologist did recommend a 50-50 split in custody, and that would have been a substantial improvement for where we were.
In the meantime, Amanda had gotten pregnant.
Lillian Love.
Lillian Love?
Yes.
And gave birth to a little baby girl.
All right.
They were thrilled to welcome baby Lily into the world, joining Grant's two sons. But that was overshadowed by Grant's struggles to break through in the music business.
Between the legal proceedings and I think Grant's spending, they're out of money.
It was a mess.
Yes.
He was the reason that my mom was not okay. Sitting in a bathroom floor crying, going, I have no idea how the hell I'm going to do this. I mean, what do? You've gone through over $200,000 in 18 months.
That's how much money they went through?
Easily.
How dire was the financial situation?
Oh, they were getting evicted from their apartment.
Grant called his mom, Patsy, and said, hey, we need to move in with you.
It's Grant. Me and Amanda and Lily are going to move in with you guys. I don't have the money for a storage building right now. If you could fund that to me, okay? All right, bye-bye.
It's now July of 2011, and while Grant and Amanda sink, Laura's fortunes were finally rising.
Her main priority in life was to get her kids back. She went back to school. She, got her own place, got her own job, got her own car.
She was very enthusiastic about the career and getting her boys back.
Laura even started a new company with her friend Siobhan, selling ad space on restaurant menus. She successfully pitched local restaurant owners and socialized with new friends.
I am to Raleigh. I don't know if I'll be able to see you before 7, but I want to find out if you're going to be available after that at any point. So that's it.
Laura sounds upbeat, but she has no idea that she's now driving straight into terrible danger. It's July 2011. Laura Ackerson hasn't been heard from in days, and her friends are worried about the 27-year-old mother of two. They report her missing.
ABC 11 Eyewitness News at 5:30 starts right now. So far, there's been no other signs of the missing woman.
I'm not the only person that's worried about her.
She's been missing for quite a while, but, there's still hope.
Ackerson apparently came to Raleigh last week on business.
We got a description of Laura's vehicle, and we put a bolo out, be on the lookout for patrol officers just to see if they are able to locate the vehicle.
That night, by 11 o'clock that night, our patrol guys had found the car.
So where was it?
Right over here, if you see this black color SUV, it's right there in that same parking space is where it was.
Was there anything suspicious in the car?
Nothing really of evidentiary value. I mean, we saw in the back seat, there were car seats, for the two boys. There was an idea that maybe she decided, hey, I'm going to go to the airport, I'm going to take a trip somewhere.
If she had disappeared with her boys, that would not have been an overwhelming surprise. But to disappear without them, that wasn't possible. That was not Laura.
So we definitely explored that possibility. We checked Laura's financials, we checked her cell phone records, all that. All her activity ended on July 13th.
She's not buying gas, she's not buying food, she's doing nothing. She just completely goes silent.
Something that we would normally do in a missing person case is we want to go to their apartment or their house. Maybe they left a note.
The police go into Laura's apartment and thoroughly search it, looking for anything that could point to a problem or that any violence occurred.
It was very well kept, it was clean. She had several plants that were inside the apartment. apartment. None of them had been watered for numerous days.
That was a good indication that she had not returned or that nobody was coming in and out of the apartment to take care of things. From looking at the apartment, you could tell she's definitely a dedicated mother. That's what stood out, number one.
Almost half the apartment was dedicated to space for the kids, and that kind of reflected her life, that, so much of her life was focused on her children.
They pulled the video from the public spaces of Laura's apartment building.
The video captured the hallway outside of her door on the morning of the 13th. Just a lady that was on her way to work in the morning by herself. Completely normal morning.
She was not under duress, did not seem to be in a hurry, did not have suitcases that she's dragging behind her.
We learned that Gentle had a birthday party the following weekend that was scheduled, and that Laura had no-showed on it. That's all when we started thinking this wasn't going to be just a normal missing person.
We still want to look, hey, are there other people in Laura's life that may have something to do with her disappearance?
Laura admitted that she'd gone to some sugar daddy sites.
You're trying to meet maybe wealthier men. We were never able to show that there was any meeting of any kind between Laura and somebody else.
One detective reaches out to Laura's ex, Grant Hayes, who says that Laura had visited him on the night of Wednesday, July 13th.
He gives timeline of when she was there at the apartment. Well, she actually came up here to visit the boys and says that she left, after being there for a little while.
Grant Hayes also tells investigators that 2 days after visiting his apartment, Laura was supposed to meet him at the local Sheetz gas station for their scheduled custody exchange.
He shows up to the scheduled Friday 5 o'clock time. He has the boys with him.
They would come in the store to use the restroom. Grant goes in to buy a pack of cigarettes. But essentially, they're waiting in the parking lot.
And waits for over an hour for Laura to arrive. And she never arrives.
He was sending out very angry email messages and text messages to Laura. You're late again. Where are you?
And first at 5:30 tonight, we have new details and new updates on the big stories happening now. I'm Steve Daniels. I anchor the evening news covering Raleigh. This was a really compelling case. Our viewers were watching this every step of the way.
She was to meet them and their father in Wilson that afternoon, according to the children's grandmother.
She didn't show up at 5, and so he was there until 5, and he called me at 6:30 and said she had not shown up yet.
It's distressing, and I just hope it all comes to an end quickly and that she's all right.
It's not like her to do something like this, especially to not pick up her kids.
Detectives realize that no one has heard from Laura since that voicemail she left on July 13th for her friend, Oksana Smarsky.
I was in a study group and I saw my phone ring and I wish I would pick it up. And if I knew what would happen, I would not let it ring.
I'll give you a call when I'm done, and I just wanted to let you know too, I don't know if I'll be able to see you before 7, but I'll stay outside.
Laura's destination that night had been Grant and Amanda's apartment. Tell me, where is the apartment?
And so their apartment is right on the other side of this small building here.
So, how did you get a search warrant to go in?
So, we had developed enough information, I just think, to get that search warrant initially. We were really trying to develop a timeline for Laura. Any evidence that maybe Laura had been there.
So one of the things that we did find in the apartment was a note. It appeared to be handwritten.
Up on the counter in the kitchen area, just kind of laying there very conspicuously, which was weird.
And what that note said was that Laura Ackerson, in exchange for receiving $25,000, would give up custody of her children.
It was signed Laura Ackerson.
That was suspicious, because everybody had been telling the police Laura would not leave her boys.
Those boys were Laura's life. She would have never signed over her children for any amount of money.
Why a note? You already are going through the court system. Why don't you just go through your attorneys?
And that is not the only curious discovery in that apartment.
As soon as they opened the door, hit with the overwhelming smell of bleach.
It It's been a week since Laura Ackerson's appearance, and investigators are now searching the apartment of her ex, Grant Hayes.
Police were here yesterday asking a lot of questions.
It's a 3-bedroom apartment. There's a small kitchen area.
I remember there being a couch, maybe a table, but there's not a lot of furniture.
Was there anything unusual about that moment when you walked in the door?
It smelled like bleach. You know, it's just that strong odor of bleach that hits you.
And so, what did that tell you?
At least that someone had been cleaning is what it appeared. But then we see this large, bleach stain.
At that point, alarm bells are going off.
Right. And that's not like a little old stain. No, a significant bleach stain right at the entryway in the apartment.
It was clear something happened right here at this door that required them to bleach this carpet.
And then there were a couple other things that we find that kind of throw up red flags as well.
The bathroom, which before July 13th had been the place where the little boys went to brush their teeth, take their baths, play in the bathtub. Suddenly, there was nothing in that room.
It's the cleanest bathroom I've ever been in.
There's no floor mats, there's no shower curtain.
And like shiny clean on every possible surface.
And what does that point to?
That something has taken place inside this bathroom that required cleaning. And I think it really stuck out too because the rest of the home, it wasn't super dirty, but it was not clean to the level that that bathroom was clean.
Clearly, something happened in that bathroom.
We did everything that you could do to a bathroom. We tore it apart. We ripped up the floor. We took out the plumbing and did everything that you could do forensically at that time. We even went to the apartment below, came up through the ceiling to get the plumbing, and nothing. There was nothing. There was no blood. Laura's body was not there. Nothing broken to indicate a struggle. So we still were kind of on the fence of what do we have here?
So investigators now have a lot more questions for Grant and Amanda. But first, they have to find them.
Detective Falk had learned that Amanda had a daughter. Her name was Shay. And Detective Falk conducted an interview with her.
The police show up at your door. What was that like?
Terrifying. I've never had a speeding ticket before. I've never been in trouble before.
And so what did you tell them?
Well, they wanted to know where my mom was. And I was like, what do you mean, where is my mom? And I was like, what is this about? And they were like, well, Laura's missing. And I was like, wait a freaking second. You guys need to find my mom. And I need you to find out where the babies are because they are probably not okay.
Where Shay tells us my mom and Grant, they took off and they went down to Texas.
Grant and Amanda were loading the kids up and making a trip to Texas to visit Amanda's sister, Karen Berry.
She was going to go visit my aunt because my grandmother had just died and she hadn't seen her sister in years, and told my mom, I was like, I want to go with you. And she told me no.
Amanda's daughter Shay tells police Grant rented a U-Haul trailer at this location on July 16th. That's 3 days after Laura went missing. Now what investigators want to know is why.
So after finding that, I requested surveillance video from U-Haul here in Raleigh.
Why'd they rent a U-Haul trailer? Well, according to Shay, there's this kind of antique hutch that she was going to give to my aunt.
At this point, Grant and Amanda were downsizing their belongings as they were getting ready to move.
I guess that Grant was like, take it to your sister's, it'll be safe there.
Did that sound odd to you?
I mean, we've had this piece of furniture for like 20 years. Why are you worried about where it's going to be now? But whatever.
Grant makes a comment when he goes to get the U-Haul trailer that he's going on a fishing trip with his son.
So the police wanted to know where Grant was, and so they checked his cell phone pings and found out that he was in Texas.
One of the first pings that we get on Amanda's cell phone is her sister Karen Berry's house.
The court ordered that they were not allowed to take Grant and Gentle out of the state of North Carolina until the whole custody situation is resolved.
It was definitely significant to us that he was willing to take the risk and go to Texas with these boys, knowing that if that was found out, that would be a problem for him.
Pretty immediately, we make a decision, hey, we've got to go to Texas.
This is literally a 20-hour drive on a hunch that we could find evidence out there. So Skinner Lane is in the middle of nowhere. 2 deputies, myself, drove to Karen Berry's house cold. She didn't know we were coming. We told her that basically we wanted to talk to her about Grant and Amanda. She told us that she was expecting us.
She was very, very nervous.
She cried a lot, and she said, before I answer any more questions, do you mind if I pray?
And it means there's something big that you're about to tell us.
And as a homicide detective, anytime somebody wants to pray, you let them pray. My first reaction was, whew, this just got real.
It was the lead story on the news night after night after night.
Grant shows up to the Friday handoff
And waits for over an hour for Laura to arrive, and she never arrives.
I can't imagine being under that Texas sun trying to find the woman's body. It was just a grotesque thing to have to do.
and you would have to dive through murky water like this?
It's not a swimming hole. It's not a place where people go paddling in. This is just sort of a wasteland.
You found a manual for the power saw. What went through your mind?
No one does construction work in this house.
I'm just buying a saw at 2 o'clock in the morning.
How the hell did we get here?
As soon as prosecutors hear this song, they're like, wow.
It was a song.
Not real life.
Until it is real life.
When Laura first went missing, this case sort of blew up. A young woman who's a parent who suddenly had disappeared, and she really disappeared off the face of the earth.
At this point in the investigation, we really don't know what exactly has happened to Laura.
Grant and Amanda had gone down to Texas to visit Amanda's sister. They rented a U-Haul trailer.
We knew that Grant and Amanda had come back to Raleigh.
Where is Laura Ackerson? That's what everyone's been wondering since she went missing days ago. Raleigh police finally have what could be a breakthrough lead, so they drive 1,200 miles to pay an unexpected visit to Amanda's sister, here in Richmond, Texas.
Karen Berry was Amanda's sister, but in a lot of ways she was more of a mother figure. She was who Amanda always turned to when she had any problems.
Well, it was a Sunday afternoon, and I received a call out advising that the Raleigh Police Department had traveled from North Carolina, and they were requesting some investigative assistance from the sheriff's office.
When they knock on the door of Karen Berry and she answers, it's almost like she was counting the minutes for them to get there. And her first reaction to them is, you can come in and I'll talk to you, but can I just have a moment to pray first?
There's some soul searching going on.
Yes.
And do you remember the words that she prayed?
Basically just a prayer of, give me the strength to do the right thing, to help me do what I need to do.
After she finished praying, she tells us that Grant and Amanda had shown up on Monday the 18th. She's excited to see her sister. Lily had just been born, and Karen had never seen her. She had never met Grant.
Karen didn't get a very good impression of Grant because he was hyper nervous.
Grant slept most of the day. Karen pointed that out.
And she could tell something was wrong with her sister.
Amanda seemed troubled, but also concerning were several inquiries that Amanda and Grant had made of her and her boys.
What were the peculiar questions?
Well, one was about the creek. Just across the street is Oyster Creek. Karen's boys, they had a flat-bottom boat. Grant and Amanda, they were asking permission to use the boat to go out there to explore for sharks. Well, we're 90 miles inland. This is a freshwater creek. I'm pretty confident there's never been a sighting of a shark in Fort Bend County.
Grant asked, are there alligators where I can access Oyster Creek?
And then they talk about they want to go fishing. They'll take the boat out fishing.
And Karen said, no, that is not a place that you need little toddlers fishing.
Karen told the police that they took the boat out one night. She didn't know why. The boys were sound asleep, so it didn't make any sense to her.
We conveyed to her repeatedly that we are not looking at her as a suspect. And then we directed the conversation toward Laura. Did Grant and Amanda tell you anything? She clearly conveyed to me that Laura and Amanda did not get along. And then she told us Amanda had come into the kitchen and said, I need to talk with you outside. It's important. Amanda said Laura's not a good person. Amanda then tells Karen, I hurt her. I hurt Laura. I pushed her, and it's bad. We asked her, do you think that Laura's dead? And Karen said, I think that there's a good chance. And at that point, she gave us consent to search the property.
The scene was immediately cordoned off. There were several areas on the property itself that we needed to search, in addition to searching the creek across the street.
This creek is off of Skinner Lane on Corbin County. We're about 100 yards west of the 4300 block.
It looks different now, right?
Yeah, things have changed a lot in the last 13 years.
There were big piles of trash all in the backyard. There was a hog pen to the right of the house.
You uncovered a lot of evidence here.
We did. We uncovered a lot of evidence. Karen was asked what items were left behind. Are these yours, or are these something that you know nothing about? We found some empty carry-on suitcases, presumably left by Grant or Amanda. We found some ice chests.
Karen was not aware that they came down there with 3 coolers until she saw Grant cleaning them out in the backyard.
If these were ice chests that were needed for their long journey to Texas from Raleigh, why weren't they needed during the long journey back?
Fort Police call in crime scene investigator Officer Kim Oreskovich. They want her to search that muddy creek across the street from Karen Berry's house.
When I got here is when Lieutenant told me that, hey, you're looking for a body.
And so what was going through your mind?
I was like, no, we're not going to find it. If there was dumped here in the creek, normally the current would take it out.
The creek was probably 25 feet wide, very swampy looking.
It's not a swimming hole. It's not a place where people go paddling in. This is just sort of a wasteland. There are alligators. They had someone in the boat ready to shoot an alligator.
We're down, obviously, on our knees in the boat, so he's literally above us, watching for gators in front of us, see if there's any signs of a gator coming out.
With a long gun in his hand.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine being under that Texas sun trying to find a woman's body. It was just a grotesque thing to have to do.
What did you see?
We're like, okay, there's something big floating on top of the water and the water lilies.
My first reaction was, whew, this just got real.
From the water to the riverbed, the search for Laura Ackerson continues. Laura's body believed to be dumped here in Texas.
It was a hot July day when you went out on the boat.
Yes.
What did you see?
We found something big floating on top of the water and the water lilies. And it was just white and pinkish. When we got up close to it, you could see that it's one half of a torso. When they said, oh, you're looking for a body, I wasn't expecting dismembered body, so that was a shock to your system.
Kim pretty quickly locates what ultimately was determined to be 2 portions of a torso kind of tangled up in the vegetation of the creek.
And that kind of confirmed to everybody here, now this is a homicide.
Once those dismembered body parts were found floating near the surface of Oyster Creek, Houston dive teams were called in. They had to search now beneath the surface of these murky, alligator-filled waters, looking for more remains. They need to know, is it really Laura?
It's becoming important to find things like the hands or the feet or the head that can help with identifying the body.
Mark Thorson and Brian Davis of the Houston Police Dive Team still remember being on scene that awful day. What kind of dives did you normally do on this unit?
We pretty much go get anything out of the water. Vehicles, guns, bodies.
And what's visibility like underwater?
Most of our dives on the dive team, we do not have visibility.
You're basically just fanning your hand out or your arm out in front of you. You want to feel it before you run over it. The first 2 hours, we searched underwater. We didn't come up with anything, so we had to change our tactic, and that's when we decided to go on our tiptoes and go through the lily pads.
And you would have to dive through murky water like this?
Yes, this is what we were facing. When you're in the middle of it, it just closes in back on. It closes in on you, and it's difficult searching, or it's hard searching for what we're looking for.
We started seeing sheen and smelling. If you've ever smelled a decomposing body, you know that odor, and you're not going to forget it. We're moving the lilies, and the scent would get stronger, or it would get weaker. As we're moving the lilies, you can see a white, grayish object in the water, and immediately knew that I had a body part. All I saw was what looked like skin, and I could see a bone. I called out to Mark. Mark swam over, and he placed his hands on top of mine and rolled it, and that was when we learned that we had the head.
We recovered virtually all of her body, but the most important piece was being able to recover her head, because we were able to do dental record comparisons, where that's as good as a fingerprint.
They were able to confirm that it was Laura Ackerson, and that mother of 2 boys was now dead.
And they knew they'd found Laura in the Texas creek. Sorry.
What was your reaction when you heard about body parts being found in a creek near your aunt's house, and somehow your mom's mixed up in it?
It was the most devastating thing to have ever happened in my life.
In my interviews with Karen, I was aware that Grant and Amanda were inquiring about where a Home Depot was at. They had some shopping that they wanted to do.
Investigators visit a local Home Depot and uncovered this video of Grant purchasing suspicious items, including muriatic acid.
We had video evidence of the purchase of the muriatic acid, garbage can, and also some large cuff neoprene chemical-resistant gloves.
A Home Depot employee told law enforcement that Grant had asked if the acid would eliminate the odor from a hog pen.
We searched the hog pen, and we noticed a larger darkened spot, circular spot, right in the middle of the hog pen. And getting close to the soil, you could smell the chemical smell of presumably muriatic acid.
So what do you think happened there?
They attempted to dispose of Laura in that hog pen.
Destroy her
Yes.
physical remains.
Or at least means of identifying her.
Despite having found Laura's body parts, the police still don't know how she was killed. But they do have enough evidence for arrest warrants for Grant and Amanda.
We head down to Kinston to arrest Grant and Amanda at their parents' house. And we take them into custody.
Grant left a note on the dresser of his parents' house, and it said that he grants sole custody of Grant, Gentle, and Lily to his parents. He had to know that he was in a dangerous position.
Both Grant Hayes and his wife Amanda are now in jail.
Hayes and his wife Amanda are both charged with murder in the death of Laura Ackerson. Both pleaded not guilty.
I even sent him a message. I said, Grant, what the hell, dude? What are you doing? Wait, why? You know? I don't know if he ever read he was incarcerated at that point.
What was your reaction to her arrest and being charged with murder?
Shocked. How the hell did we get here?
I can't imagine a daughter watching her mother be arrested and charged with murder and have to contend with that.
It's soul-shattering. It makes you question your morals and values. It makes you question who you are.
Soon, authorities find even more evidence they say will bolster their case. When you see the surveillance video, what went through your mind?
It's scary. It's barbaric. It's inhumane.
Soon after their arrest, Grant and Amanda are led into the courtroom.
Are you Grant Ruffin Hayes?
Yes. Jason Ackerson watched from the front row as the father of his sister's children faced a judge. Grant Hayes III is now charged with killing his children's mother. They have also charged his wife, Amanda Hayes, with murder. Today, both Hayes and his wife went back to jail with no bond.
These guys are monsters.
My mom's not a monster. She got pulled into a bad situation. That woman in that picture is not the mama that I grew up with.
Shay, she didn't think her mother could be responsible for anything violent.
At some point, she had found this owner's manual for a skill saw.
found a manual for the power saw.
For some type of power saw.
What went through your mind?
No one does construction work in this house, and I don't see anything freshly built.
She made a decision to kind of help us.
I figured if they had the manual, they could figure out where he bought it. And they did.
It was Walmart that tells us, yeah, we actually sold one on the early morning hours of July 14th.
They found Grant Hayes at 2:30 in the morning after Laura Ackerson was last seen on the 13th at Walmart buying supplies, plastic gloves, PPE, plus a reciprocating saw.
A reciprocating saw, depending on the blade you use, can rip through almost anything.
The video shows him kind of pacing back and forth and looking at the different saws. You know, you wonder, like, what's going through his mind as he's doing this.
He went in, he didn't disguise himself. He didn't try to cover up his looks, didn't try to dodge cameras.
He's very cool and calm and collected, knowing that he's got a dead body at home. I'm just buying a saw at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I am a retired reporter with the ABC station in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina.
I'm at Crump right now in Raleigh.
I was the crime reporter. Early in pretrial motions, we started learning that the defense strategy for Amanda appeared to be to blame Grant. And for Grant, it appeared to be to blame Amanda.
They both throw each other under the bus.
They absolutely do. They both blame each other.
It's like a murderous he said, she said.
For sure. And it makes sense, right? If you're looking at it from a defense standpoint, for either one of them, you need to blame it on somebody else.
Once it became clear from defense motions that one defendant was going to blame the other, the judge said if we do them separately, they both get a fair trial.
Finally, 2 years after the murder of Laura Ackerson, Grant's trial begins.
I was an assistant district attorney, and I prosecuted Grant and Amanda Hayes.
On July 13th of 2011, Laura Ackerson woke up excited. Little did she know that within 24 hours, that man, the father of her children, would be the one responsible for her murder and disappearance.
I represented Grant Hayes. Another attorney, Will Durham, joined me. Our defense was Grant didn't do this, there's no evidence he did this, and all the evidence suggests that Amanda is the perpetrator of the homicide.
His attorneys made this point and they were right. Just because Grant did a gruesome deed by disposing of a body and dismembering it doesn't mean he's a murderer.
His mindset was very much, he didn't do this, they couldn't prove it, and he would be fine.
In the 2 years since the murder, Grant Hayes has appeared in court several times. Some court observers say he often looks smug. Maybe that's because he thinks he can pin the murder of Laura Ackerson on his wife.
What was Grant's demeanor like during the trial?
Disgusting. He was so nonchalant. He had no problem he was going to beat this.
District Attorney may call your witness.
The way the prosecution decides to begin their case is to paint a portrait of Laura Ackerson. To do that, they bring in the people who know her best.
Laura loved her children more than anything, and it showed in every action that she took. I told Laura that if she wanted to fight for her kids, I would be there to support her, and she said, I'm going to fight every step of the way.
Would you state your name, please?
Siobhan Nicole Mathis. Her main priority was to get her children back before anything else. Even when she was working, she would drop whatever she had to do for her kids.
As we watch this case unfold, it was so striking to see the extraordinary lengths Grant and Amanda went to try to cover up their crime, but they left a very clear trail behind them.
Describe the range of evidence you had to deal with.
The defendant went out and tried to find the best saw blade and the best plastic sheeting and acid. We were able to use these saw blades and had a scientist from NC State compare the saw marks in Laura's body.
You can see how the blades actually match up.
These coolers really were evidence of the deliberation and thoughtfulness that the defendant had after the murder.
Could you unfold that and display that for the jury? Has some sort of bleach discoloration.
Electrical tape that was purchased.
Despite this mound of evidence, we don't actually know how she was murdered.
Sure, there's 3 adults in the apartment when this happened, and 2 of them are charged with first-degree murder, and one person's dead. It was kind of hard to prove exactly what had transpired.
I didn't have enough information with the parts that we received to determine the exact cause of death.
What was your opinion as to the cause of death?
I called it undetermined homicidal violence.
The defense lawyers are telling that jury, look, there's no murder weapon, There's no exact cause of death. You can't find this guy guilty.
The issue is who killed Laura and what happened and why. And the state really didn't have any direct evidence.
This made the defense feel like there was a chink in the armor and that they had a way to get in.
But soon, prosecutors would try to use Grant's own words against him.
I got this real free, baby. I can't get any more from you.
As soon as prosecutors hear this song, they're like, wow.
Despite the mountain of evidence in this case, it's still unclear who killed Laura and how. The prosecution is about to call a witness who claims to know what happened.
Here is jailhouse informant Pablo Trinidad, who can tell us what Grant said happened inside that apartment.
Pablo Trinidad met Grant at the Wake County Jail, where they were both behind bars. Pablo was being held for drug-related offenses.
He's the typical snitch witness. He was doing maybe 25 years. He was looking a way to try to get a sentence reduction.
Were y'all housed in the same area of the jail?
Yes, ma'am. We had several conversations throughout the period that we was housed together.
Pablo Trinidad got in front of that courtroom on the witness stand, and he said, Grant told me in our jail cell he and Amanda strangled Laura.
He said he placed a call to her and lured her to his apartment, and that's when him subdued her and strangled her.
With the corroborating evidence, there was this glimmer of truth in there.
Whether you want to believe what he's saying, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. You can't prove it other than this is just my word.
Your testimony is that during that 5 days, y'all developed such a special bond that he told you all his deepest dark secrets.
That's correct.
Defense lawyers chipped away at Pablo. They knew that Pablo had snitched on other cellmates before.
And so you started thinking back, what are all the names I can give these people, didn't you?
Yes.
And you remembered Grant Hayes. He was your meal ticket, wasn't he? One of them, at least.
If you wouldn't put in those words, that's your words, not mine.
Thank you, sir. You missed him. I hate to say that a jailhouse snitch was a pivotal witness in this case, but he was.
The prosecution has one last piece of evidence, and fitting for Grant, it starts with a beat.
Shetty actually brought to our attention. She knew about this song that Grant had previously recorded. It was called Broomstick Rider.
Broomstick Rider, Grant Hayes, my baby's mama, Deshaun, you got me.
The lyrics of it told what his desire to do to Laura was.
I put a price tag on your head. That's right. You must have told your attorney I got intentions on killing you. This order might stop me, my bullets will get you.
He wrote this song with Laura in mind. His attorney called it parody.
The state at this time could seek to publish a song that was recovered off of the defendant's iPod.
The defense objected to the song, saying it wasn't relevant, but the judge overruled and allowed it in.
They both kind of peer over and see the defendant bobbing his head and sort of rocking out to the song about killing the person that he was on trial for killing, which is sort of a staggering event.
It was a song. It was a song.
Not real life.
Until it is real life. And it messes up your entire existence. It messes up who you think you are at your core. Can we take a second?
The defense calls a witness with crucial first-hand testimony that seems to support Grant's version of the story. It's Amanda's sister, Karen Berry. Remember, Amanda told her sister that she hurt Laura.
Could you please state your name for the court?
Karen Berry.
Could you tell me how you know Amanda Hayes?
She's my sister.
The defense is trying to prove Grant didn't commit this crime, that it was Amanda who committed this crime.
Our case focused on statements that Amanda made to her sister.
She came in and she told me that she had hurt Laura and that she had hurt her bad.
She says, I hurt Laura, not we hurt Laura, or he hurt Laura.
It actually benefited Grant to some degree because for Grant, his defense is Amanda did this.
Well, that was definitely a defense bombshell. But when she was pressed further, she detailed another story that happened.
I said, I want the truth out of you now. And I looked her straight in the eye and I asked her if she was covering for Grant.
How did she answer?
She looked me straight in the eye. She shook her head and went,
Well, that kind of undid everything else.
The defendant's whole case sort of backfired on them. I mean, Karen's testimony did not come out like they wanted to come out.
In their closing arguments, each side has one last chance to convince the jury.
They're trying to give you some reason to convict him without giving you the evidence. You will not let emotion decide this case. You will not let your disgust for the things that happened in this case lead you to a verdict.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
I really wanted to communicate to the jury that the way that this murder happened was different. It was more personal.
Here's the saw.
And so that's why I pulled out that saw.
This saw cut someone in half.
These are the lengths that the defendant went to try to not just get away with this murder, but also erase Laura from the world.
He is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and you should find him so. Thank you.
After 3 weeks of graphic testimony with 50 witnesses and 500 pieces of evidence, the jury goes out to deliberate. Within 2 hours, they're back with a verdict.
We, the jury, by unanimous verdict, find the defendant, Grant Ruffin Hayes III, to be guilty of murder in the first degree.
Grant Hayes was sentenced to life in prison without chance of parole.
I was happy to see that he got that, and I was happy to see that the jury felt the same way.
Glad he's not going to be part of society. It is consolation for that factor, but it still doesn't bring her back.
Only a couple of months later, it's time for Amanda to face justice.
Amanda took the witness stand in her own defense.
I was just doing whatever he told me to do.
Grant did not testify, but now he's talking to me.
This is a Global Template prepaid call from
Grant Hayes. Hello?
Hey, Grant?
Yes.
It's Juju Chang at ABC News.
This is a Global Template prepaid call from
Grant Hayes.
After Grant's trial and conviction, many questions remain unanswered, like what happened in that apartment. So we arranged to speak with him from prison. But his claims about how Laura died doesn't really add up.
Grant, can you hear me? It's Juju Chang at ABC News. Thanks so much for calling.
Thank you for picking up.
So let me ask you this. People have described you as very charming, but also manipulative and even scary.
I don't really have any defense for what people think about my character, but you know, I'm not in prison for being a bad person. I'm in prison for killing a woman, and that didn't happen.
So you're saying you didn't kill Laura?
No, I didn't kill Laura.
So what happened that night in the apartment? How did she die?
From what I was told, when I left the room, she had asked to hold our 5-week-old baby, and Amanda had refused her, and Amanda told me that Laura had actually grabbed her by the hair and pulled her back, and that she had swung back with her elbow, hit her, dislodged herself from her, and ran into my recording studio. And when I came back in the room, Laura was laid out.
I just want to get this straight, Grant. You're blaming Laura for her own death?
Laura attacked the woman. I don't know any other way to look at it.
And so, at that point, why not call 911 to try to resuscitate her?
I was freaked out. Honestly, I was afraid. I was very, very afraid.
And then you're captured on video buying a saw. Who came up with that plan?
Well, Amanda had a plan to take Laura's body to a swamp at her sister's in Texas. And we had to get it out of the house, and the only way we could do that was if it were dismembered. So I guess you could say it was carrying out a plan that was Amanda's.
It's only been a few months since Grant's conviction, and now Amanda Hayes' trial is to begin.
In Amanda's trial, we're still putting forward the same evidence as Grant's trial, but at the same time, we want to accent Amanda's role in everything.
The defense was trying to show Amanda she was coerced by Grant and only did what Grant said in order to protect herself and her child.
But Amanda isn't just sitting there idly. She is an active participant in everything that we see. In Texas, there was a camera trying to catch people illegally dumping or littering, and it captures exactly that.
Where are we in relation to where her sister's house is and where the body parts were found?
We're just 1.5 miles down. In my particular unit, we were in charge of environmental crimes. At that time, the camera was set up right where you see these two trees. Saw something was odd in the photos. Female that got out of the truck started unloaded boxes and jugs and started shoving them under the tree in this fence line right behind me. She was shoving it into the bushes. And then I found some boxes of acid. Seemed really strange. And I had watched the news the night before showing her court appearance in Raleigh.
And so how did you put that two and two together?
They looked like the same lady. It was kind of really basic.
People look at that and say, she doesn't look like she's under duress. She doesn't look like she's afraid.
A picture can tell 1,000 words, but it can hide 1,000 words too.
What do you think that picture was hiding?
I think that the picture shows a still frame of a woman thinking she's out in the middle of nowhere in the country and just trying to hurry up, get it over with, get it done.
And my question is, if you are driving a vehicle down the road, dumping evidence, and you are so scared, keep driving. Go to the police, go somewhere for help.
The one difference between these two trials, we found out Amanda would testify.
I think the defense had decided that if she went on the stand, she had a way of projecting innocence.
Right now we're going to begin with the North Carolina trial of a woman accused of killing the mother of her stepchildren.
Taking the stand for the first time this week, Amanda Hayes' defense was simple.
I was just doing whatever he told me to do.
Her husband made her do it.
How would you describe her? Strong, poised, well-rehearsed, but in a very sweet, almost sing-songy baby voice.
Amanda, did you kill Laura Ackerson?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you help Grant kill Laura Ackerson?
I absolutely did not.
Were you present when Grant killed Laura Ackerson?
No, sir, I was not.
Grant told me that Amanda killed Laura in self-defense, but Amanda says it began with an accident.
The picture that Amanda paints inside that apartment on the night of the murder has Laura bumping into Amanda as Amanda is holding their newborn baby, and describes Laura falling to the ground.
Amanda Hayes, she had no idea Laura Ackerson had died after Ackerson was injured at the Hayes Raleigh apartment. She says she left with the children when Ackerson fell and hit her head.
I think she hurt her own credibility by telling these implausible stories about she came back after a couple of hours and had no idea that Laura had been killed and her body disposed of. You can't even do all that in a couple of hours.
This is a small apartment. Dismembering somebody takes a lot of things. Seems hard to believe that your mother didn't.
It seems hard. It does seem hard to wrap your head around. It does.
I know you love your mom. I know you support her. Could it be that you're seeing it through rose-colored glasses?
Absolutely.
And that perhaps she was more involved than you'd like to believe?
Nobody will ever know what they don't know.
She also testified that her husband threatened to kill her if she didn't help dispose of the body.
He told me that that I had to help figure out how to get rid of this body, or else none of us were making it back to North Carolina, to Raleigh.
Did it ever seem to you like she could have also been a victim of Grant Hayes?
You know, I feel like there's a possibility that Amanda was a victim of Grant's charisma, Grant's narcissism. But beyond that, I don't believe that she was a victim of anything.
No one knows what that relationship's like, but in those pictures on Amanda's camera reflect Amanda having a good time and smiling the whole time.
Amanda Hayes is a former bit-part performer who attended acting school in New York, but according to one of the prosecutors, none of her acting jobs were as good as the one she gave in this courtroom.
She has given the performance of her life.
She came across as sympathetic. She came across as, Grant's the controlling jerk, and I just got swept up in all this.
We're asking that you find her not guilty on both charges.
But would the jury believe Amanda?
We may never know what kind of verdict Amanda Hayes expected. If it was something different than what she got, her face didn't show it.
And what does Grant make of it all?
Laura's death killed me.
You're saying essentially that you're the victim in all of this.
The last night that I was with Grant, he handed me a notepad with these pages on it. Told me that it was important lyrics and that it was going to be worth money one day. But this was probably the most unsettling of the poetry that I found. I guess it's one sentence with the word murder in it 6 times. It's murder, 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 murder in my veins, murder in my soul, desertless in my heart, but to let this all go. And I think that's what just really upset me a little bit and had goosebumps when I read that for the first time after finding out about Laura.
Dramatic testimony in a first-degree murder case. Did her husband force her to cover up his crime?
It will be up to the jury to decide if Amanda Hayes was his accomplice or another victim.
It's time for Amanda to face justice. They wanted Amanda found responsible for her role in the death of Laura to the tune of first-degree murder.
It is the unanimous verdict of the jury that the defendant is guilty of murder in the second degree.
Amanda was convicted of the lesser charge of second-degree murder, and she was sentenced to between 13 and 17 years in a North Carolina prison.
They were both there. They both had the opportunity to save Laura's life. Neither one of them did it, so to me that makes them both guilty of first-degree murder.
What was your reaction to the verdict against your mom?
It was a glimpse of hope.
Why is that?
Because it wasn't life with no chance of parole.
Amanda is later tried and convicted in Texas for tampering with evidence, resulting in an additional 20 years in prison. What does justice look like for her?
I think more of it is what does justice look like for Laura and those little boys.
Who actually delivered a death blow? I don't know if Grant did it or if Amanda did it. The fact is, this husband and wife collaborated to kill this woman.
Despite being convicted for killing Laura, Grant remains steadfast in defending his image. It doesn't sound to me like you have a lot of remorse about Laura's death.
Let me tell you something about my remorse and Laura's death. Laura's death killed me, killed my family. So I think I'm the most remorseful person. I'm the one who everyone points at and says, he did this. He's the bad guy. He's the monster under the bed. It's just not true.
You're saying essentially that you're the victim in all of this.
No. Amanda and Lillian were the victims.
What, if any, regrets do you have in this whole matter?
I regret that we took her body apart. It just colors the way that people are going to see me for the rest of my life.
When you think about Laura, what comes to mind?
I talk to her. I ask her to always watch over all of the kids. And I tell her thank you for watching over me.
Today, all 3 of Grant's children are being raised by his own mother. The kids have no contact with Grant or Amanda.
Those boys were Laura's life. She was doing everything to have a better life for them. She was a wonderful mother. She loved her boys more than anything, more than her own life.
We should point out tonight that Grant Hayes has filed several appeals. All have been denied. He tells 2020 he's continuing to fight for freedom.
Meanwhile, his ex-wife, David, Amanda, is in a Texas prison serving out her conviction. She declined to be interviewed. That's our program for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Deborah Roberts.
And I'm David Muir from all of us here at ABC News in 2020. Good night.
Emergency, how can I help you?
It was a violent, frenzied, and very, very aggressive attack. It almost severed his head. If members of the public have any information at all, this was an 83-year-old family man. It was a brutal attack with no known motive at this time.
It's such a quiet and peaceful place. It just seemed incredible what could happen here.
This was the biggest manhunt.
From the instant I saw him, I realised he didn't fit in. I do regret not following him to see where he went.
Can you explain to me why your DNA is on that man?
East Harling, a quaint village nestled in the heart of the South Norfolk countryside.
It's a lovely little place to live in. It's really quiet, but it's got a lot of sense of community, a lot of pockets of very different helpful people, sports, and there's a couple of pubs.
Really nice place to live, safe place really. You know, everyone a lot of people know each other around here.
With its bountiful forests and country walks to enjoy a quieter pace of life, Harling and its neighbouring villages are the perfect places for many to set up home.
People will usually say hello to you and stop and have a conversation. A lot of dog walkers in the area, of which I'm one. And they definitely always pass the time of day with you.
Harling Heath, a really, really nice place to walk, and we use it for biking, running and dog walking.
The Heathlands, on the edge of the villages, has long been a draw for dog walkers. But this idyllic setting was shattered early one morning, when a body was discovered in brambles on the heath.
Police emergency, how can I help you?
He was found by a couple that were walking their dogs. They saw his dogs walking without anyone, and then as they approached the scene, they could see some blood on the ground and his body partly covered by some brambles just off the pathway. The police were called.
I just remember it was a Saturday, I was at home, and I just remember hearing these police sirens screaming through the village.
Didn't actually come to the afternoon, and arrived here. So all these police cars there were. All these police cars around for us, but it's quite bizarre.
Rumours about the discovery of a body in undergrowth fly through the villages.
An initial assessment suggested that he may have been subject to an animal attack.
One early theory was an attack from an animal, and that was mainly led from the extent of injuries. Obviously there's Banham Zoo, not a huge distance away.
I was very sceptical of that because we know what's in the woods, and I can't think of a wild animal that had been over there to do such damage to kill somebody. There isn't animals over there to do that.
The news spreads among the local dog walking community. Could a wild animal really have attacked and killed a man on their doorstep?
There was a sense of fear, but that kind of not really believing it was going on in the village.
I think it was a bit of a shock to everybody. Like, it's not something that happens in this area. It certainly put us off walking our dogs there for a while. I had a young daughter at the time, she was only 3, and I wasn't keen on taking her there,
Rookie journalist Zach Ward was one of the first to get wind of the story.
So at the time, I felt shocked, I felt surprised. This was my first job in journalism. It was our goal to try and handle it sensitively. The stories we normally covered at Disc Express were very community-based, they were human interest. It was about council tax going up. It was people's 100th birthdays, it was that level of local news. So when we say things like this don't happen, that's not a cliche, it's genuine. We had really very little experience in covering this major event.
Police finally identify the body in the woods as 83-year-old Peter Wrighton. But who is he?
Mr. Wrighton was retired. He lived with his wife. He had 2 dogs, one 13 and one 9 or 10 years old, that he walked regularly.
He had retired to Banham, which is about 5 miles as the crow flies to East Harling. He'd worked for BT for 35 years. He'd been married for 59 years, and he sounded like a gentle, kind, loving man. Loved his dogs. He was walking with Gemma and Dylan at the time, and they both stayed with the body, which I think tells you the bond between dog and owner. He sounded like a really well-respected member of the community, and we got an outpouring of tributes and sympathy once his name had been released.
The first time we moved in, we went and introduced ourselves to the neighbours. Peter and Anne were very, very welcoming. One of our first things to do was to invite them over for a meal.
They were always friendly. You go over there, they'll always welcome you. And obviously they used to take their dogs out for a walk, both of them. And they loved dogs, so they took in a lot of rescue dogs.
Father of 2, Peter was a daily visitor with his 2 dogs to the heath, just a few miles from his home in Banham. Tragically, on the morning of his death, his wife Anne had gone in search of him when he hadn't returned home.
Been shopping, and on my way back, I was driving by, and Anne pulled out her car and drove towards Harling. I thought that was rather unusual for her to go out and leave the house empty without them being out together. I didn't think much more of it than that.
Mr. Wrighton had failed to return home, and Mrs. Wrighton became concerned and actually drove out to the Heath to look for her husband in case possibly he'd had a medical event or become lost. As she approached the scene, she made herself known to the police, who were already there.
While Peter's wife is escorted home, his body is taken for a post-mortem examination to verify the cause of death.
When the post-mortem took place, it was established that he had received quite a violent attack. Probably initially from behind. Many of the stabbing injuries were to the back of his neck and a cut across his throat that actually cut all the way back to the spinal column. May have taken 4 or 5 sideways cuts. It almost severed his head. There were other significant injuries, a stab wound that went into his left eye.
The result immediately changes the course of the investigation.
We had a phone call from Anne informing us that Peter had been murdered.
But what had gone on? Why would someone want to kill such a well-respected member of the community in such a violent way? In the quaint countryside of East Harling, a post-mortem examination has just revealed that far from being killed by a wild animal, much-loved pensioner Peter Wrighton had been murdered. But why?
I think someone may have put a suggestion forward that it could have been as a result of an animal attack, but when you consider the circumstances, it would appear the way he had been deposited, he had been dragged backwards, and his arms were on top of him, which would be unlikely if he was pulled there by an animal.
Mr. Wrighton had been stabbed over 40 times, including some very deep wounds to his throat, which had almost severed his head from the rest of his body.
It was a violent and aggressive attack with only one outcome, likely with the way that he was attacked.
Immediately, a murder investigation is launched to track down the killer, and everyone is a potential suspect.
This was the biggest manhunt for a long, long time.
We've got additional officers in the local area at the scene of the murder. We've also increased our patrols and our police physical presence in and around East Harling.
They were very present, patrolling up and down the road. There was mounted police going around the village on horseback.
At the back of the forest here, the police stopped me all the cars and asking you what were you on that day, were you here, taking your name, address and so forth.
Police officers involved in the investigation will have been looking for dog walkers in the area. People have routines and return to places quite regularly, and therefore they will also have people on the heath at the same time, the same day, several days after, to pick up those who regularly go and may have been there in the morning.
As the police were searching the crime scene here, they cut all the grass down really short. All this field was cut very short. All the hedgerow here was cut down to virtually nothing. I guess they're looking for the weapon, I guess.
As news spreads throughout the local dog-walking community that there's a killer at large, so does the fear.
When the murder investigation started, nobody was walking the dogs over the woods. They didn't know who it was.
When people first found out about the murder, then I think it was one of complete disbelief that something like that had happened in the area. And then I think probably naturally mixed in with a bit of fear around who was this person that committed the crime, and were they still at large?
I mean, this was in broad daylight. This was at 10:30 in the morning, potentially. So I think afterwards people were wary. I think people were wary about walking their dogs on their own.
Police established that the 5th of August 2017 started out like any other day for Peter Wrighton.
It was a very typical day for him. He'd been to the shop earlier as he was walking his dogs.
Peter was picked up on CCTV at a local shop at 9:57 a.m. His car was spotted at 10:14 a.m, heading to the heathland to walk his 2 dogs. 30 minutes later, his body was discovered.
Police emergency, how can I help you?
Mr. Rustin's wallet was still on him. His car keys were still with him, making it unlikely that it was a robbery. The Heath really is a friendly area that people go for relaxation and just to walk dogs and just to get out and get some fresh air, etc. It's not somewhere where you would expect this level of violence.
Another potential theory was around other uses of the area. One dog walker who had used the area quite regularly had mentioned to police that he thought there was suspicious activity involving drugs and people buying drugs around that area.
Police quickly rule out a robbery gone wrong. So who would want to cause this quiet, friendly pensioner harm?
The majority of murders occur between people who know each other. And so an initial line of inquiry would be to establish those people who know Tim and anyone who may have any sort of grudge or dislike or whatever for Mr. Wright. You tend to work in concentric circles around the victim, and so you look very close and then you gradually branch out and expand your inquiry, eliminating people as you go.
Peter was quite reserved, he was quite quiet, because he was such a kind, gentle soul, and happily married to Anne. It didn't make any sense. How could somebody be so wicked? To pick on somebody so kind, so loving.
His son and daughter live away and could be easily established as not having been in the Norfolk area, so that would eliminate those family members. And therefore the police then need to look further outside the family unit and expand their inquiries.
Yeah, we tried to think about people that knew all of us. Could it be anybody that we knew?
Any other significant friendships or relationships before his move to the area?
Well, we came up with no's everywhere, so it had to be random.
With no obvious clues in Peter's past, police turned to the media and the public for help.
If members of the public have any information at all, even if people think this is a small snippet of information, tell us, because it might be a small bit of information. That's the final piece of the jigsaw that we need. We're really, really keen for anybody that was in and around the area between 1 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Saturday the 5th of August. This was an 83-year-old family man. It was a brutal attack with no known motive at this time, leaving behind a wife and children. Another major line of inquiry is through the media to try to gain intelligence from and identify members of the public who may have been in the area at the time.
The police had appealed for information, and the initial amount of people coming forward with information was really, really high. We're talking about the hundreds.
It's important you get to people as soon as possible so that that image is as clear as possible in their minds.
Intensive questioning of local dog walkers starts to give police some leads.
That's the day of the murder. I came up the second day and the policeman said to me, "What are you doing here?" basically. And I was a little bit scared because I thought perhaps maybe they would think it was me, because my footprints would be on the soil here and everything, and touch certain things, I guess, so forth. DNA, that sort of stuff, I guess. I don't know how that kind of works, but quite scary at the time.
Didn't sink in at first. And then when they're talking about, it happened such and such, and I thought, well, I was in the forest then.
So as part of the appeals, initially the police were wanting to speak to 2 male individuals and gave very detailed descriptions.
Police rule out the 2 dog walkers. But Peter Bibby is pulled in for questioning.
I did an interview at work, an interview at home, where they took all fingerprints, DNA.
See? Good boy.
Even took DNA off the dog, took all my clothes.
Good boy.
Yeah, it was quite harrowing, but I suppose everybody's a suspect till you're proven innocent.
But unknown to Peter, something he had witnessed on the morning of the 5th of August was about to turn the investigation on its head.
It was a normal day over the Heath. Met quite a few new people, which was quite nice, a few of the people that I used to know. Yeah, just a really nice, peaceful day. Yeah, this is the route that I took. I regularly walked this ridge, and this gate wasn't there at the time, so I would come along here,
and then I turned down and walked back through the woods in a round circle. Saw somebody walking towards us, and it just didn't look right. He wasn't dressed for walking in the forest. He didn't have a dog. He wasn't with anybody else. It was just totally out of sync.
Through their inquiries, they identified another person who'd been dog walking on the heath at the time, who had spoken to someone who seemed out of place, didn't seem to be dressed to be walking, didn't have a dog. You know, dog walkers tend to, it's not a uniform they wear, but they tend to dress in similar ways and know who looks in or out of place.
His feet, he had like heavy duty flip-flops and a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. Very smartly dressed and was totally out of character for walking dogs in the forest. We were both walking up wheel roads of a car. So I was walking up the right-hand one, he was coming down the left-hand one. When we actually passed, he was about this far away from me. I could have put my hand out and touched him. If I hadn't said hello to him, he'd have definitely walked past me and wouldn't have given me the time of day. There was no chance of any eye contact, not even any fainted little glances. He had his head forward and he was just walking forward and ignoring everything. And then he went on, and then I was wondering to myself, what's he doing? Where's he going? It's not right.
He provided an e-fit of this person that became very key to the investigation later on.
I do regret not following him to see where he went. Yeah. And that's sort of bugged me for a while.
Suddenly, police have a description of a man they believe could hold the key as to what went on that morning on the heathland. They release an e-fit. But who is this man? And is he a killer? The rural Norfolk countryside is still reeling 6 days after 83-year-old Peter Wrighton was murdered on the heathland while walking his dog.
Shocking events such as these have a significant impact on the community. One of the first things the local police inspector will do is a community impact assessment to try and reach out to the community and reassure them that the police are doing as much as they can to protect them and to resolve whatever the incident is that's happened.
Such a shock for this area because it's so safe and so sort of old-fashioned way. I guess you leave your doors unlocked, you leave the keys in your car. I don't expect you to get murdered. It's just bizarre. Afterwards, people are quite scared of walking the dogs in the forest.
Police still have no suspects, no murder weapon, and no motive.
I think any time there has been a murder in these sort of circumstances and no one's been found, there's likely to be wariness, there's likely to be some people who sadly won't want to leave the house. That shock was always there, I think. It was random, it was unprovoked, it literally could happen to anybody.
It wasn't safe for any of us if there's a murderer already. It's murdered Peter, was it something personal or not? We didn't know. After the murder of Peter, I was very reluctant to leave the house.
Having turned to the public for help, police receive information about a man who had stood out on the heath on the morning of the murder.
I just saw his feet first, and I thought he's wearing like heavy-duty flip-flops. It's not the sort of attire you'd think of going dog walking. Pair of shorts on. Most people don't wear shorts through there because of the nettles, bits of bracken and all sorts of stuff like that. He was walking with a purpose.
Police release an e-fit of the man described, and suddenly there's a breakthrough. Police receive a tip-off about a local man, 24-year-old Alexander Palmer.
So, following the police appeals, a psychiatrist who had worked with Alexander Palmer then came forward with some concerns around previous things that Palmer had said.
The psychologist told the police that when treating Alexander Palmer, he had ideations of violent attacks, often with a knife.
Palmer had talked about his desire to attack random people. The voice in his head he called Little Alex.
Once Alexander Palmer was known to the inquiry, he was allocated to a team of detectives as a person of interest. Having obtained a photograph from Facebook, it was immediately apparent that there was a very strong likeness with the e-fit that had been provided by one of the dog walkers.
So at the time we knew that Palmer was 24 years old and he lived in Cringleford in Norfolk, and he had previously been a part of the armed forces.
Having identified Alexander Palmer as a suspect, an arrest strategy was prepared and he was arrested at 4:40 the following morning.
News of the arrest quickly spreads.
I wasn't sleeping. Quite paranoid about it all. I always kept looking at my iPad, to see if there'd been any updates. And I think there's one at 3 o'clock in the morning that first published Alexander's name. So I quickly thought I'd have a look at Facebook. And lo and behold, there he was. As soon as I saw him on Facebook, I realised that was him. Without a shadow of a doubt.
After Alexander was arrested, they'd informed Anne, and Anne informed us that someone had been arrested for it, which was a relief for us.
As part of the arrest strategy, having been brought into custody, various forensic samples and a DNA swab will have been taken from Palmer, which will have been fast-tracked to the laboratory to try to get a profile as soon as possible. Having an outstanding profile from Mr. Wright's trousers, they need to know as soon as possible whether there could be any link to Alexander Palmer.
With forensic evidence being processed, Palmer himself is brought in for questioning.
Can I get you to introduce yourself, please? Alexander Hobbs Palmer. As I said, the e-fit was prepared from a description. Have a look at that. What would you say about that? That's a pretty good likeness.
Alexander admitted that he had been in the area at the time.
During the first interview, Palmer revealed that he had been in the area. He said that he had travelled there and feeling depressed. He had stood there and had cried to himself and had walked about and then returned to his car, parked somewhere separately and had another walk and then left the area.
He was quite adamant about it, that he had not done it. He was not the killer. There was a Roman road that dissected the wood, and Mr. Wrightson had been killed on the west side of the road. Alexander said that he'd been on the east side at all times. I found him to be pretty calm, composed. He was intelligent.
Despite Palmer's denials, on the ground, detectives worked tirelessly to find evidence to link him to the crime.
You're looking for something that will link him to the scene, something that will link him to Mr. Wright. So you're going to look for any clothes that have been worn at any locations that he's been to. So a house, lock-up, work, vehicles that he may have used, looking to seize as many items as possible to initially assess them and then send them for forensic examination.
And it isn't long before forensic investigations start to produce results.
It was the second day of interviews that the positive result on the DNA matching Alexander Palmer to the DNA profile found on the trousers, probably where he dragged Mr. Wright into the bushes, grabbing his trousers to pull him along.
What could be his DNA was found on Mr. Wright's trousers, and what could have been Mr. Wright's blood was found on the collar of a jacket that belonged to Alexander.
That was the main evidence to link Alexander Palmer to Peter Wright, and obviously that then entered into the interview strategy.
Can you explain to me why your DNA is on that man? I'm afraid I can't without knowing. You don't need to know. It's irrelevant where it is. You say you haven't met him. Why is your DNA on him? For instance, I could have lost a hair follicle, caught on his shoe. That's just me speculating, but without knowing, I couldn't venture a guess. Okay.
Police now have a DNA link between the two men, but need further proof linking Palmer to the crime.
A search of his car identified a map which had markings on it indicating the area of the heath, which is obviously of interest because it indicates some sort of pre-planning before going to the scene.
There was ANPR data, the number plate recognition, which puts Palmer at the location at the day of the murder.
Some ANPR evidence had been recovered with Palmer driving his car in the morning when dropping his partner off in the city, which showed him apparently in a white or light-coloured shirt, and when he was seen picking her up in the afternoon, he was seen in a dark-coloured shirt. And yet his account was that he had been wearing the same clothes all day, but he appeared to have changed his clothing, and none of that clothing, which is highly likely to have been heavily bloodstained, was ever recovered.
Police believe they have irrefutable proof that Palmer killed Peter Wrighton, but they still don't know why, or what with, and their suspect is now refusing to talk.
I'll ask you again, were you involved in the murder of Peter Wrighton? No comment.
He made it very clear that he was not guilty, was not responsible, and he hadn't done the killing. And that remained his position throughout.
Detectives analyse Palmer's phone records and come across a damning photograph.
It was established that he had bought a hunting-type knife, and in fact there was a picture of it, I think, on his phone. That picture of the knife was shown to the forensic pathologist, who confirmed that it could have caused the injuries.
Alexander Palmer is charged with murder. But what was his motive? And what drove him to kill? February 2018. And Alexander Palmer is standing trial at Nottingham Crown Court, accused of murdering Peter Wrighton in August 2017. A crime which had sent shockwaves through the small, close-knit community of East Harling.
I think my first initial thought was, whoever done this is a coward. The nature of the frenzy the murderer did. It was a cowardly act on an old man who's out walking dogs.
Totally shocked, I couldn't believe it, because it's such a quiet and peaceful place. It just seemed incredible it could happen here. It just seemed impossible, really.
Prior to the court case, Palmer has to undergo psychological assessments to determine his capacity to stand trial.
I believe he was initially sent to Belmarsh Prison and then to Rampton for that assessment. And the question to be answered was Alexander Palmer mad or bad? Had he carried out this attack because of a mental illness that he was suffering from, or was he just a very violent and nasty person?
So who is Alexander Palmer?
When I first met Alexander, he was 24 years old. He'd been 23 at the time of the offence. He had no previous convictions, no cautions, no findings of guilt, no reprimands, nothing, so far as the police were concerned, that would suggest that he would commit such a violent offence. He'd served in the British Army till about 2015. He had trained and qualified as a commando, one of the few who actually qualified in his year. But there was one thing of note. In March of 2014, a fellow trainee had stamped on his head, and that was only the beginning of his mental problems. Because of that, he had been medically discharged from the army.
Throughout 2015, Palmer was treated as both an inpatient and an outpatient in mental health services. Seen by several different psychologists, but one expressed concern to the police after seeing media appeals about the murder.
One of the people that contacted the control room was a psychologist who had worked previously with Palmer following an assault on Palmer whilst he was serving in the forces that had an effect on him.
And one piece of information comes to light which is particularly chilling.
The psychologist told the police that he had a dislike for dog walkers.
Dog walkers, he said, were a particular bugbear of his.
He was obviously suffering some mental health problems brought on by PTSD. He had some kind of grievance with dog walkers is the thing that stands out.
He had made disclosures about ideations around violence and a dislike of dog walkers.
Having been deemed fit to stand trial, the court hears how Alex had revealed on arrest that he heard voices in his head.
Palmer had talked about the voice in his head he called Little Alex.
Is there a different Alex? Times, yes. Okay, who's he? He used to manifest himself as a physical hallucination, but now he's just a voice. Is he still with us? Is he here today? Yes. Where is he now? What is him here? He's there, is he?
Palmer admits being on the Heathlands on the day of the murder.
So was Alex there that day? The other Alex? He's always there, so he's always there, so he would have been with you, okay? Was he? Do you remember him talking to you on that day? You don't? But you say he talks to you every day. Yes. He's there laughing at you. But you say he doesn't tell you what to do. He doesn't force you to do things or anything like that.
Palmer, during the court case, had said that he had visited the woodland because he was feeling low, but didn't say that he'd been involved in the attack.
But the prosecution puts forward evidence linking Palmer to Peter Wrighton.
Several of Mr. Wrighton's clothes were sent for forensic examination, and they had identified DNA from a person on the length of his trousers.
I believe there was DNA found on Mr. Wrighton as well, which linked Palmer to the murder.
The court also hears that on the morning of the murder, ANPR cameras picked up Palmer's black Ford Focus on the A11, heading towards the Heath. Mobile phone records reveal he is stationary on the area of the Heath from 10:19 a.m. for a period of 32 minutes and 55 seconds. His car is then picked up heading north on the A11. The whole journey, police believe, had been planned in advance.
A search of his car identified a map with the area marked out.
In fact, investigations reveal Palmer had completed the exact same journey 2 weeks prior to the murder. Had it been a practice run, or had he intended to kill on that day? Either way, it was Peter who found himself at the end of Palmer's wrath on that fateful day.
Why did he pick Peter?
Being that Peter's about my stature and a bit older than I am, Peter was easy prey for Alexander.
But did Peter actually try to help this man? We don't know. Nobody will ever know. Because this man won't say anything now. Did Peter try to help him? Peter suffered for it. We don't know.
It was also revealed that despite his age and smaller stature, Peter had tried to fight off his attacker.
He had what we would refer to as defensive marks on his hand. It would appear that he tried to grab the blade of the knife to stop his assailant.
It was unprovoked, and he was a very, very old man that couldn't defend himself. Because Alexander's quite a strong lad, military background, very fit and able. Peter Wrighton could hardly stand up. I think very cowardly.
The prosecution revealed further evidence that Palmer had planned to kill. Police had found a notebook in a storage facility belonging to Palmer, in which it appeared he had written of his plans.
So in January of 2015, he said he was thinking of going for dog walkers. He said that he hated dog walkers and that if he did this, he would be up on a pedestal, up with the big ones. Everyone would look up to him. Everyone would know his name.
But while police did discover the notebook, there's one thing they never did find: the knife he used to kill Peter.
The prosecution case would be that the steps that he had taken to get rid of any forensic evidence would indicate a knowledge of what he had done and an intention to cover up what he had done.
On the advice of his barrister, Palmer does not give evidence in his trial.
I explained to him that it's his case, his future, his liberty that's at stake, and that we act as a voice for him in the courtroom.
The notebook, DNA, witness statements, and the EFIT, as well as Palmer's medical records, are put to the court.
Prosecution case was a strong one. ANPR evidence in relation to his vehicle, and cell site evidence in relation to his phone. showed that he had been in the area at the relevant time. In addition to that, there was evidence from 2 eyewitnesses who had given descriptions of the person who was likely to have been Mr. Reitman's attacker, and those descriptions were quite similar to the appearance of Alexander. One of those 2 witnesses had made an e-fit, and again, the e-fit was quite similar to Alexander's appearance. There was no direct evidence, but if you put all those matters together, it represents quite a strong case.
Having heard all the evidence, the jury retired to consider their verdict.
The trials came to a conclusion and the jury found Alexander Palmer guilty of murder.
When a jury decides after 40 minutes, I think there's obviously overwhelming evidence to suggest that Palmer was the person who carried out the murder. That was the one thing that stood out for me at the trial, is how quickly they decided that Palmer was guilty of the murder.
Despite evidence of Palmer's mental health problems, the judge ruled that he had meticulously planned the murder.
The statutory sentence is life imprisonment, but there is a recommendation from the judge, which in this case was 28 years. I would suggest that the fact that once convicted and imprisoned, he was sent to a normal prison rather than a psychiatric prison indicates that the assessment was that he was a violent and nasty person.
Good girl, good girl. Come on.
The dog walkers of East Harling will never forget the horrifying crime which leaves its mark on this close-knit community.
Not the same in the forest here for months. People were not relaxed, they're very nervous, looking over their shoulder all the time. I was doing the same, actually, looking over your shoulder, seeing what the cars were parked here. It's very bizarre, kind of a chilling feeling afterwards.
And for Peter Bibby, his brush with evil will live with him forever.
It was quite a scary thing, and it's all the what ifs. What if I had gone back? You know, would have changed things. I was walking straight forward to it. It could have been me.
I think that anyone who becomes a prosecutor realizes the cases that you care about the most are the ones when the most innocent of us are hurt or murdered. If you can't protect them, then what are you doing? My grandma was 99 when she passed away, and I remember thinking, oh, she's super safe. When she went to her retirement home, nothing can happen to her. You have to feel that way. You need to feel that way. But in 2018, law enforcement officers around Dallas, Texas, happened upon a serial killer who was preying on a world of very vulnerable victims. Everyone assumed since the victims were older, they were dying of natural causes. But these were not natural deaths, it was murder. And the killer was able to take the lives of over 20 people.
Police say they plan to review every single death of an elderly woman in the area where there was no witness.
That morning, I was out running errands, and Scott called me and said he got a call from somebody who said that Mom didn't make it to the Dallas Cowboys watching party, and she wasn't at church.
It's terrifying when you get a call that somebody who's very reliable, who never missed a Cowboy game in the history of the Cowboys, was missing church, missing her friends, missing that Cowboy party, and not answering her phone. You panic. After calling her multiple times and her not answering, then it was very obvious there was something wrong. I contacted Rod, and we headed straight to the house.
I was the first one there. Unlocked the door, called for her, ran through the living room, and I saw her feet snap on the side of the bed. She was really pale. Her arm was across her face. I took her arm across, and her glasses were all messed up. She was unresponsive, dead on her bedroom floor.
I'm just in shock.
2 weeks before, the doctor said, perfect health, you're going to live another 20 years. What happened?
Your brain's trying to process that this woman that you'd spent Christmas with a week before is laying crumpled on the floor, dead. Rob stepped out to call 911. This flood of people to start rolling in, first responders, the EMTs, then the police show up. The detective had told me they've looked her over, they don't see any signs of a struggle, no bruising, they turned her back, everything was fine.
We asked the police, say, hey, we noticed that she was missing her rings on her fingers, her wedding ring and then the ring that my dad got her.
That she never took off. These were fixtures, and they were gone.
And they say old people hide stuff. The police didn't think there was any foul play. It was natural causes.
Our mother was very engaged in church, very supportive of the community. She was a very positive person. She was very optimistic. Things were always going to work out, keep a positive attitude, look to the future, be nice to people, things tend to work out. That was kind of how she lived her life.
Sweet, sweet lady.
Couldn't have asked for a better woman to raise us, to be there for us through her entire life.
When you think of the safest, nicest, most well-off part of Dallas County, you think of Plano, Texas. It's where you go when you have everything. So if your mother is retired there, living in a home there, you're going to think she's pretty safe. But in 2018, all that was put into question.
Plano 911, what's the emergency? We have a neighbor that we cannot awake. Okay, is she breathing? Yes, she is breathing. Okay, and how old are they? She must be almost 90. Okay. We can't wake her up.
After the paramedic spoke with Mary Bartell, he felt there was something more to this story, and he wanted an officer to investigate this. I responded to the hospital, spoke with Mary Bartell, introduced myself to her, and asked her if she would tell me in her own words what had happened. At around 8:30 in the morning, she walks to her front door after hearing constant knocking. As she was going to the door, this suspect pushes his way in. First thing she sees and focuses on is his green gloves. He told her to go to the bed, and she just complied. Once she got to the bed, he pushed her down, grabbed one of her pillows from her bed, and put it on top of her face and chest, and just pushed down real hard. Mary Bartell thought she was going to die. That's the last she remembers. Mary Bartell states that she was missing jewelry, rings that she had on both of her hands, one of those rings being a wedding ring that she's had for 50 years and never really took it off. My first priority was to get an investigator to Mary Bartell's house, so I contacted another detective, and as she was going to process Bartell's crime scene, she learns there is a suspicious death investigation right across the hall, which is Ann Conklin's residence. So at that point, the Plano Police Department was investigating one death, Ann Conklin, and attempted murder on Mary Bartell to see if they were related or not. We started to do a canvass, looking for any other witnesses, any other video, anything that would give us a lead. We learned that just a few days before, on March 15th, a gentleman by the name of Richard Plink picked up his mother to take her to a doctor's appointment and observed this black male, well-dressed, sitting in his Nissan Altima at Crescent Place. And later, he noticed the same person was still in the same parking lot, but at a different parking spot. He just thought it was weird, so he asked him if he could help him with anything. And this man stated that he was fine, that he was just waiting for his next therapy appointment. That's not really unusual because there's older people in that community, but it was not settling to him. So he wrote down the license plate, and when we ran it, we learned the driver of that car was listed as Billy Schmimmer. So we started looking at Billy Schmimmer a little bit more and learned that he had some prior arrests for criminal trespass at another senior living center in Dallas. Now we know that we need to locate Billy Schmimmer. It was this red jewelry box with a name of Lou T. Harris.
With the possibility of more victims on their hands, officers do a welfare check on Lou T. Harris.
4 or 5 cases quickly jumped to almost 10 cases. An
attack on a 90-year-old woman named Mary Bartell leads police to the connection of another case that might be related in another part of Dallas, where a suspect named Billy Shamirmir had a prior arrest for a criminal trespass at another senior living facility 2 years earlier.
Edgemere is a senior living facility in Dallas. And in April of 2016, security personnel had noticed that this man had been around and they weren't sure why, and he was given a warning not to return. Then he did return in June.
This man is stating that he was a healthcare worker involved with the location, which ultimately was not true. And Dallas PD identified him as Billy Shamirmir. He had no affiliation with that location and was given a criminal trespass. So we had started looking at Billy Shamirmir a little bit more. Billy Shamirmir is an individual who came to the United States in the early 2000s from Kenya, who had a visa for a short period of time to be here to work and got into the healthcare business as a caregiver. So we started getting very suspicious that maybe our person of interest in the attack on Mary Bartell and the death of Ann Conklin is Billy Shamirmir. We learned from Dallas PD that Billy Shamirmir had a warrant out for his arrest for public intoxication out of Dallas. Detective Triviate and I discussed it and said, he's a person of interest. Let's get him in custody, bring him to the Plano Police Department jail, sit down and talk to him and see what we learn. The arrest team set several officers throughout his apartment complex. A person who we believe to be Billy Shamirmir drove in around 6 p.m. We had a detective near a dumpster. Billy Shamirmir drives to that dumpster and then discarded some items. He was able to see Billy Shamirmir get back into his car and drive to his assigned parking space. They went up to him and made the arrest. And when they extracted him out of the vehicle, on his person, Billy Shamirmir had some jewelry, bracelets, some $2 bills. As they detained him, they went and looked at the dumpster to find out what did he discard. There was this red jewelry box, and it had miscellaneous items with a name of Lou T. Harris.
With the possibility of more victims on their hands, while Billy Shamirmir is being detained, officers do a welfare check on Lou T. Harris, who lives in the Dallas city limits, which borders Plano, Texas.
Upon our arrival, we were told by Dallas PD that Ms. Harris was located inside the residence. The residence was secure, and she was found deceased next to her bed. Everything appeared to be natural. We discussed with Dallas PD deployment that we were investigating, specifically Mary Bartell, and that the likelihood of the weapon being a pillow, because that's what Mary Bartell described her weapon to be. They went back inside and found a smeared lipstick on Lou T. Harris's pillow. We also informed them that we found a set of keys in the center console of the car that Billy Shamirmir was arrested out of, and they confirmed that the keys go to her front door. At that point, they agreed based on what they found and our investigation with Mary Bartell, it was decided that Dallas PD Homicide needed to get involved.
I'm feeling a lot of fear and panic because we've never had police presence on our street. One of the neighbors told me Lou T had been murdered. To think that something like this would have happened to Lou T was beyond sad. Lou was friendly. She was funny.
Lou T. Harris is a fascinating woman. She had grown up in Vietnam, and she was actually airlifted out of Saigon when it fell. She married an American man, and she made a life for herself here in Texas.
In 2018, Lou was living by herself. Her husband had already passed away. So you never really thought about, we need to make sure if she needs something, because she always gave you the complete sense of independence.
The day after the arrest of Billy Shamirmir, my partner and I go to Dallas PD and go speak with Billy Shamirmir in their interview room.
Detective Triviate. Plano Police. And Martinez.
Billy Shamirmir was just like a happy person, not a worry.
Been a busy night, hasn't it? It is.
When Billy Shamirmir was initially arrested, it was only for a Class C public intoxication, but that allows them to take him into custody and ask him questions about anything they want to. At some point after that, if they believe there's enough evidence to charge him with something else, they can.
Those people scared me yesterday, the officers. I was like, I thought that looked like a movie, and I was like, is this real?
Oh, it's real.
I don't know.
Our thought process going into this is we're not going to probably get a confession from him.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
We just wanted him to talk and see what nuggets of evidence that we could use against him.
You're telling me that your phone stays with you?
Yeah.
No one else has that phone.
When Billy Shamirmir is being detained, shockingly, he agrees to voluntarily give them his cell phone. Maybe because at that time he didn't realize that would also give the investigators access to his text messages, any photos he had on his phone, and also his GPS locations.
So Monday would be the 19th.
Yeah.
Or what'd you do that morning?
Oh, that morning I went to meet this guy on, I had a ring I had to sell to this guy on, there on 75 and Coit, on the Starbucks there.
March 19th, when Mary Bartell was attacked and possibly Ann Conklin, he told us, he did go sell a ring. He went to Starbucks, but stayed up and down that he was never at Preston Place in the morning. He was at home at the time.
You know, the Preston Place is basically adult living center.
Your phone is telling us that you're there too.
No.
When we did legal process and got his cell phone records and got his location data, that was absolutely a lie. If you're involved in this or not?
No, I'm okay.
And he was professing that he was innocent, not worried that he did anything wrong, that evidence was showed that he did nothing wrong. And it was like, okay, do you mind giving us your DNA?
Are you allowing us to get the buckle swab?
Okay, with that, voluntarily giving that to us?
Sure.
Make sure you're okay with that.
I am very okay. Anything in there, fingerprints, identity tests, okay.
After talking to Billy Shamirmir, he was charged with the capital murder of Lou T. Harris and the attempted murder of Mary Bartell.
I want the truth.
That's all I need to know, and I didn't know to do any wrong.
Police.
Martinez.
Billy Shamirmir is under arrest for the attacks and murders of elderly women in Dallas and Plano, Texas. But they want to build their cases and find more evidence to make the cases even stronger.
Early in the morning, the time we were interviewing Phyllis Shamirmir, Dallas PD was wrapping up their crime scene investigation in Lou T. Harris's home. They found that there was a receipt that showed a nearby Walmart and her making a purchase prior to her death, which led them to Walmart to investigate that further. And learned that Billy Shamirmir was also at that same Walmart just prior to Lou T. Harris being killed in her home. It is suspected that Billy Shamirmir is at that Walmart hunting victims. He's scoping out Lou T. Harris, doing some surveillance on her, looking for opportunity, and to determine if this is going to be someone he can victimize.
As you have detectives working on the cases in Plano and in Dallas, the investigators become aware of yet another case in Richardson, Texas. Mary Brooks died 2 months prior to the first cases.
Mary Brooks was an 87-year-old woman who was living in the Dallas area. On January 31st, 2018, Mary Brooks's grandson gets a call from his mother, who's worried about her mother, and she asks him to check on her. And the grandson found that his grandmother was dead.
I was just going to do one last look. Didn't hurt just to make sure I didn't see any suspicious loads or anything.
There were groceries all out on her counters. They hadn't been put away. Her family discovered missing jewelry, and there was a receipt that showed that she had been on a shopping trip to Walmart.
Richardson PD's investigation led him to the same Walmart that Lou T. Harris was at. She was grocery shopping on the day she was killed, but they didn't have a suspect at that time until we learned of Billy Shamirmir, Walmart, and Lou T. Harris. So then Richardson PD's to look, okay, can we put Billy Shamirmir at the Walmart? When Mary Brooks was there, Richardson PD was able to show In the video, Billy Schmimmer was parked in relation to where Mary Brooks was parked. And when Mary Brooks returned to her car, you see the silver Nissan Altima, which is believed to be Billy Schmimmer's vehicle, exit with her and follow behind her. And shortly after, she was found deceased. We met with Dallas PD, Richardson PD, Frisco PD. They also had some stuff that they were very interested in Billy Schmimmer being their person of interest. And when we looked at it, it's like, okay, let's look at the location data. Can we put Billy Schmimmer there? Oh, we can. We were jumping from cases to cases, and 4 or 5 cases quickly jumped to almost 10 cases. And it spider-webbed from that point.
On July 16th, 2018, there was a phone message from a task force that was investigating a killer who went around to independent living properties. My mother, Doris Gleason's death was being investigated as a homicide. It took my breath away. On Sunday, October 30th, 2016, I drove over to pick my mother up for church. I get to the door is unlocked. I walk in and see her on the floor over by the dining room table, and she was gone. She was 92. I felt shock, sadness, a bit of devastation. I'd never experienced a death like that. And then when I hear that Mama had been murdered, I am floored.
The detective who was working the Schmimmer case called me to go and look at pictures of jewelry that they'd gotten off of Billy Schmimmer's phone. We asked the detective, are you implying that you think that Billy Schmimmer killed our mother? And he said, I'm convinced of it. He said, I've already pulled records from his cell phone, and his cell phone was in the vicinity of her house on Saturday and on Sunday morning before you found her dead. Suddenly you find out she's died violently, and you start the grieving process all over again. And now you're grieving a violent death.
While Billy Schmimmer is in custody, 4 different police departments are already working on all these investigations, and the number is now up to 22 different victims. This makes Billy Schmimmer one of the most horrendous, prolific serial murders in Texas history. But will there be enough evidence on any one of these cases to actually convict him?
When the case first came into our office, there was talks about that we might have a serial killer that's preying on elderly individuals. To be honest with you, I didn't think it would turn into the volume of cases that it actually turned into. I just didn't think that was possible. In the end, he had 22 indictments for capital murder and 2 indictments for attempted capital murder out of not only our county, Dallas County, but also including Collin County. It is a lot. Just had total disregard for human life. And then judicial economy, in the end, you can't try all of these cases. We had what we believed the strongest case with the Lou T. Harris. Mr. Schmimmer was found with her property hours after being with her. We went back and found him at Walmart at the same time. So that became a very strong case for us circumstantially.
Having Mama's case not being tried was incredibly frustrating, but I also recognize the need for the strongest case. The goal was to get those convictions. And if that wasn't my mom's case, then okay.
I was brought on to Billy's case and became one of his 3 attorneys. I was intrigued in regards to the facts and allegations in and of itself, and then just the sheer number of indictments that were coming out against Mr. Schmimmer. No matter the number of indictments or charges against him, he's simply accused. And that's what we have to make the jury aware of until they decide something different, meaning that the state has proven its case to each and every one of them beyond a reasonable doubt. He's just simply accused of these offenses.
The challenges in this case are, let's be honest, the amount of evidence was overwhelming. Was it circumstantial? Yeah, but what a lot of circumstantial evidence. That being said, you still have to present that evidence very understandably, very concisely. And the other big challenge you always have is you still have to pick your jury, and you better not pick one bad juror.
Our goal in this case was to see that Billy Chemirmir died in prison. In these types of cases for the death penalty, we would have to go to Kenya. We would have to do those types of things to do a good full background on him. That was unavailable to us, it was unavailable to the defense. And we would have to have delayed it even further, and we needed to get resolution to this case.
In the morning, jury selection will begin in Dallas for the trial of an alleged serial killer. That is Billy Chemirmir. The pandemic is going to prevent victims' families from witnessing his trial in person.
The whole scenario was just different. We were not allowed to have anybody in the courtroom that was not a part of the trial. The victims' families, they couldn't face the person who had done this to their loved one. They had to watch it like everybody else did through closed-circuit television.
If I'm on a jury in COVID time and the family members have to come in one by one with masks on to testify, that's not going to have the same impact as seeing a courtroom full of cops and victims' family members and people watching the trial. They didn't get the real feel of anybody's pain or anguish or frustration.
In opening statement, I really just want to tell the jury kind of a glimpse of what they're going to see, what they're going to hear, and how I believe the case is going to be set out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a case about stalking, smothering, and stealing. When it came time to presenting evidence to the jury, we really wanted to show that there was a close connection to Billy Chemirmir and Miss Harris. When the Plano Police Department arrested Billy Chemirmir, he had in his hands the jewelry of Lucy Harris. And I used family members to identify those items and say, yes, I recognize those as being things that she was wearing. Do you know any reason why she would get rid of these things?
No, those were her personal items that she wore every day.
We then present cell phone data showing Mr. Chemirmir's actions, placing him at locations that link directly to Lou Harris. We relied heavily on the FBI in putting together our mapping of the pattern of Billy Chemirmir on these days. Typically, he would go to a location where there is a victim. He would stay there for a certain amount of time, pick his victim, murder them, take their jewelry. Then he would travel down to a known location where you could sell these items and then head back home.
Are these cell phone records we see here March 15th, March 19th, and March 20th?
Yes, sir.
So the response to this statement, asserting that Billy was at these locations by way of the cell phone data, what their expert is able to say is that the device that they believe belonged to Billy Chemirmir was pinged or located in certain areas, but they cannot say that it was actually Billy himself. It's simply the device.
The defense's strategy in this case, with the overwhelming amount of evidence that there was to try to create reasonable doubt. You try to poke holes in each witness little by little and argue reasonable doubt. In this case, you would think that's a stretch because there was so much evidence, but sometimes that tactic works.
In criminal trials, using evidence of other crimes or bad acts is generally not admissible. However, it can be for limited purposes. In this case, it was more for motive and identity, since no one actually saw him kill anyone. But we wanted them to know that this same person with the same profile and the same similar acts had been with other women who were told, this is the correct person. We have the right person.
Could you raise your right hand, please?
We decided to go with Mary Bartell because she brings to this case a voice for all the victims. She is the victim who survived, and she was able to tell her story through deposition.
I heard this very insistent rapping at the door. The door was opening inward, and when my eyes were just fixated on these green rubber gloves, I knew instantly, number one, I should not have opened the door. Number two, my life was in grave danger. He just smashed a pillow down hard over my face and my chest, and I just couldn't breathe.
The defense lawyer was able to cross-examine her in her deposition the same way he would have in the courtroom before COVID happened.
She said the individual that walked in was very articulate and very well spoken. And asked about an accent. She said she didn't recall hearing an accent.
You didn't notice any kind of accent or anything about his voice that stood out to you?
No, I was just mainly concerned about whether I could get some help before I died.
And anyone that's ever heard Billy speak, he has a very thick accent. And that's important. The jury needs to understand that that's important.
Did you ever look at his face?
I was fixated by the green rubber gloves.
So you never did get a look at his face?
No, I did not.
There was nothing that placed him there except for Mary Bartell. And so if you think she's mistaken or that credibility is not as high as what you would like it to be as a juror, then you set that case aside and ask yourself, is the evidence sufficient to prove that it was Billy beyond all reasonable doubt?
We wanted to show Mr. Chemirmir's interrogation video because Billy Chemirmir did not have a good story as to why he's in possession of Lou T. Harris's items. He stated that he acquired them from a man on the side of the road. He couldn't give us the man's name. It just seems so illogical that he is at Walmart with Lou T. Harris and then happened to buy from some random man her items hours later and was caught with them.
You had their money. You had their jewelry. You had their jewelry box.
I believe them playing his statement backfired a little bit. And the reason I say that is because he gave himself a defense.
Do you think that the items are stolen?
That was what I was thinking, because I was like, why is he bringing all this, the box with everything?
Way too many times in my career, when I was getting ready for trial, I would tell my main detective, I'm not going to offer your interview of the defendant. And they would get very upset. And I would say, no, it's self-serving. He doesn't tell the whole truth. He minimizes his involvement. He acts like it's self-defense. Why would I offer his version of what happened? By presenting the videotaped interview of Billy Chemirmir, the state allowed that to be his way of putting his defense on. And they weren't able to cross-examine him at the same time because he never had to testify. And the state doesn't get to say, we call Billy Chemirmir to the stand. It's not up to them. If he chooses not to testify, that's the end of his story.
That's what this entire case is about, is reasonable doubt. And it is rampant. There was so much evidence that they had introduced. You've seen an exorbitant amount of evidence and items put in, but we're talking about quality and not quantity. And that was my argument, is they're presenting all these things, but what is the quality of this evidence in regards to them meeting their burden?
In this day and age, with what juries expect today with modern forensics, which I'm so sick of hearing, there's no such thing as too much evidence. I wish we could all have that problem.
This is the first time in my career as a prosecutor I've been accused of bringing too much evidence. It was mentioned a couple of times that this is going to be a difficult chore on your part. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think it's going to be that difficult. Once we concluded closing statements, cases in the jury's hands, we just have to wait now for their answer.
I happened to be there in the courthouse, and the evidence was so well laid out, so we were expecting 30 minutes later the jury to come back. And as that jury waited and waited and waited, and then went home to come back the next day, we were very concerned.
And it went a little longer and kept going a little longer, and I said, well, somebody's back there thinking.
This case should have been a slam dunk. You would expect a quick verdict, but it took over 2 days. The jury was still deliberating, and they still hadn't come up with a verdict.
After several notes that were sent out by the jury, they were deadlocked, unable to reach a verdict.
Judge Jones, we remain deadlocked at 11-1. After additional deliberation, we received no change.
Then I moved and requested a mistrial, and it was granted.
Mistrial has occurred, or a hung jury has occurred.
We are just disappointed that they could not come to the correct and obvious.
I don't have a word to describe the unfairness, the injustice.
Given that Lou T. Harris's case was, by the prosecutor's judgment, their strongest case, and they got a hung jury, they had to have been devastated when they got that back. Unfortunately, what all those family members learned is with the jury, you never know what's going to happen.
When I heard of the mistrial, I was disappointed for the families and immediately started thinking about participating in the second trial.
The elected DAs in big counties have a huge office to run. 300 lawyers work for them. So when the DA, John Creusot, comes aboard to try the case with Glenn Fitzmartin, that's a big deal.
We went into the second trial terrified of another mistrial.
I think there was also a resolve on the part of the families to come back and make sure that we did whatever we could to help the DA to close that case on the next time through.
For the second trial, the COVID restrictions have lessened a little bit, so we're now able to put the court courtroom back to the way we're used to it, where spectators are allowed in, family members are allowed in.
The court was filled with so many families from other victims feeling like that may be their day in court, and certainly hoping for justice for Lucci, but also justice for their family members also.
I've been licensed for 42 years, and I was a judge for 22 years, so I saw a lot of cases tried. To me, voir dire is probably the most important part of the case.
Voir dire, it's not the glamorous part, but it's the part where you better not get it wrong, because if you do, one juror can ruin everything. In this case, they had to voir dire question a whole big group of people at the same time, and then to decide how many strikes they were going to use against how many people.
So looking back after we had a hung jury, I thought that we could do better in the jury selection process. I think the art of jury selection is understanding what your issues and problems are and being able to fashion a voir dire that helped them understand exactly what the law was. For example, circumstantial evidence, and helping them understand that circumstantial evidence does not mean weak evidence, and committing to, if we prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt with circumstantial evidence, they could return a verdict of guilty.
It makes me crazy that too many people think that circumstantial evidence cases are weak, because they're not, and they never have been, and they never will be, because every little piece points to the same thing. Every little piece is the truth, and when you put them all together, how beautiful can that be?
The main difference in this trial is that you do not see the taped police interview with Billy Chermermier.
I didn't go to anybody's apartment.
When they didn't play the interview at the arrest, that was a game changer, because that way he wasn't able to spew his lies without any cross-examination.
During the closing argument, District Attorney Creuzot linked the evidence back to what he had talked to the jurors about in his voir dire in the selection of the jury.
I told them we're counting on them to do what they promised under oath that they would do, and reminding them of the issues that we went over with them, especially circumstantial evidence. If you had said no, you wouldn't be on this jury. We brought you the evidence, and the only thing left is your job to deliberate, follow the law, and in our opinion, return a verdict of guilty.
The argument it's still beyond a reasonable doubt. Extremely circumstantial. Argument is still that there's no direct evidence placing him in the home of Lucci Harris. There's no direct evidence placing him on the street of Miss Harris. There's no direct evidence even in the extraneous case that places him in Miss Bartell's home or neighborhood.
At the end of all the closing arguments, I think there's a healthy amount of anxiety in everybody in the courtroom, especially the families, because they've watched this not turn out well a few months before. And for me, I know, because of 42 years of practicing law, that I have no idea what they're going to do.
This was a stunningly fast verdict for a capital murder trial. Jury deliberated less than an hour.
It's like pins and needles. It's high anxiety. But we had the rug pulled out from us before, so our trust is really low that this is going to be okay.
The jury has reached a verdict, and that verdict is: we, the jury, unanimously find the defendant guilty of capital murder as charged in the indictment.
Billy Chermermier was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And I knew at that moment in time that Billy Chermermier would die in prison.
I have goosebumps when the jury renders the conviction that he is guilty. There is such a flood of relief.
On behalf of the many victims, we are incredibly relieved that justice is finally here, especially after the mistrial 5 months ago.
There was a lot of relief and joy that the justice had finally been done.
About time. Why did it take two? But everybody's just as happy as can be that he's never going to get out of prison.
I look at Lucci's death and could sound strange, but I think that she would be proud to know that she ended all of that, all of those killings, and that was the end. After her, that was it, and they got him.
Well, what was satisfying about this verdict that Mr. Chermermier had announced to a news station that he would never go to the penitentiary. And when that verdict came back, of course, I looked at him. He didn't have much expression, but I thought, you're on your way, buddy.
I think the whole experience has got us both thinking about how to protect elderly people.
When I worked through that, Mama was the 8th victim in 3.5 months, that this had happened at 3 other well-respected properties in the Metroplex. That's when I knew that something had to change. Secure Our Senior Safety is a nonprofit foundation committed to showing the vulnerabilities in independent senior living and hopefully correcting those vulnerabilities. SOSS is proud that we got 2 bills through on legislation to change the security in independent living. My mother was incredibly private, and that was a real big struggle for me in the beginning. She believed a lady's name was in the paper when she got married and when she died. And so for my mother's face to be splattered everywhere in her name, my mother would not like that. But over time, I think Mama understands my commitment to make her friends safer than she had been. And in that way, I think she's proud of it.
Can you imagine the impact and the horror that came on over 20 different families because of all the people that Village Shamir murdered? I think the good that came of this is that those facilities have made stronger safeguards. Some laws have changed to try and ensure that that keeps happening. And let's hope that when we have our grandparents and parents and even us go into places like that from now on, they're way more protected as a result of what happened in this case.